Hey, Matt. Good, how are you?
Yes, but no, you're right. This time, he's still at work.
Yeah, I was gonna say engineering office.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
You can hear us okay, both of you?
Yep, just fine on my end.
All right, so we've got a pretty long meeting tonight with an executive session, so let's go ahead and get started. Meeting follow-up. Zulema, do you have anything?
Mayor, no, I do not.
Council have anything from the last meeting they'd like to talk about, bring up? Okay. Peace in Our Cities recap.
Thank you, Mayor. Peace in Our Cities was a program that was initially brought to us in February of this year by former Councilor Jaela Sutherland following what was a pretty troubling period of time here in Casper where we suffered the tragic loss of several of our youth to violence. Ms. Sutherland introduced Peace in Our Cities as a global network that supports cities in reducing violence by up to 50%. The network emphasizes a balance between law enforcement and prevention and tailors support to individual community needs. Councilors at that time expressed broad support for joining the initiative, highlighting the importance of strategic coordination, access to external resources, and the city's leadership role. So on March 4th of 2025, you all passed a resolution to join Peace in Our Cities in their initiative with the goal to gain access to that expert knowledge, best practices, and direct collaboration with cities that are facing similar challenges to what Casper was facing in order to foster a safer, healthier, and more connected community for our residents. Then fast forward, in August, Peace in Our Cities actually coordinated a trip for a Casper delegation to Edmonton, Canada, where they would learn what Edmonton has done to combat violence and related issues in their community. And so this work session is a follow-up to that trip so that council can hear from the delegation what they learned and what their recommendations are for moving forward to a more peaceful city. So if it pleases the council, I would like to turn the time over to that group to present details.
Awesome. Come on up with our presenting. Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. I will be super quick because you just heard almost exactly what I was going to say. So thanks. That was awesome. It's really good to see all of you. I'm really just kind of going to do a little bit more laying the groundwork, and then you'll hear from others who were present on the City Exchange. So maybe the only thing that I'll add to what you just heard is that we had these really excruciating events with violence against youth and among youth. And so there was a lot of consensus around doing something. We were talking a lot about doing something. And so this is kind of a step in the direction of having an opportunity to meet with other communities and learn from particularly Edmonton about what they've done in their community to kind of coalesce around a unified strategy to reduce violence. And so we went to Edmonton, and you'll hear what it was that we learned from them, which was quite a lot. So Peace in Our Cities isn't intended to be a program itself. It's intended to be a space that offers support, that offers access to information, to expertise, and that can draw, create space for those relationships and that networking to happen. And so this City Exchange is an example of that. And I just want to say that we actually have really wonderful work that's already happening here in Casper. So this was never intended to say nothing is happening. It was intended to be able to build off of the good work that's already happening and to importantly offer some ideas about a strategic approach that kind of unites the work that's happening and maybe will offer some ideas about what could be added on to those efforts. So that's what you'll hear from others who are going to speak today. So we do have a pretty report from the Exchange. There's a lot of information in there that really is meant to just be like the tip of the iceberg in terms of providing some awareness about what we learned about, and then a whole bunch of hyperlinks to be able to learn more and go more in depth into anything. But in terms of Peace in Our Cities, Casper, the Trust, and the Health Department are all members. And so Peace in Our Cities continues to be a container for the community to access to learn, to ask questions from, in terms of being able to provide further guidance or information that's helpful to the work as we move forward. So I will stop and let you speak.
Sorry. Okay. Council. So we, as City Manager Lopez said, and we did an exchange program. So the Casper delegation included city and police leadership, the Public Health Department, Natrona County Collective Trust, and Peace in Our City representatives. So while we went to Edmonton because we share similarities with that community, although they're much larger, we have similar challenges. So it would follow that we would have similar solutions to those problems. So the purpose of our visit was to learn about the programs that make up REACH. So REACH is the overarching program in Canada, which ties all of the other little programs together. So much like Casper, they have various entities that provide various services, and then REACH is their overarching one. So in Casper, we have various entities. So we're learning about that and how they tie them all in together. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Shane to go over some of the key insights from Edmonton.
Hi, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilor. So everybody's kind of talked about Edmonton has similar challenges, although they're much larger, so I won't worry with those details. But what struck me was that they were able to reduce violence by not asking police to do more, but creating kind of an ecosystem around the police department, and to include shared responsibility, shared data, and shared outcomes, and it's been successful. So much so that their crime reduction plan, supported by crisis diversion, youth services, and housing strategies, contributed to their achieving the lowest crime rate in nearly a decade in 2024. The biggest project, I have a couple of them takeaways, but the biggest one would be the 24/7 crisis diversion ride-along that we all got to park in. If you look at the front of the report with the kind of the repurposed ambulance, we got to ride around with a group of trained civilian responders operating around the clock. So they have 24/7. They operate with a 211 system, if I remember that correctly. So they have tablets. Somebody puts in a call for service, they look at that call for service, and then they respond and offer up some services in kind. We went to, I think, 3 or 4 calls, Fleur and I did, where we offered, I shouldn't say we, they offered to give rides, they gave them a sack lunch, a small bottle of water, and some socks, and then talked to them like they were human beings and treated them with kindness, and then kind of left them on their way. What this does is, typically the calls that their law enforcement agency would go to, and some of the ones that we're confronted with responding to, public intoxication, welfare checks, people in crisis, that team takes. And what they were able to say is through their own analysis, and I don't know what exactly that looks like, but they were able to save $1.91 for every dollar they invested in this program. And so what it does is it frees officers to respond to crime and not crisis. The other piece that stood out to me is they have cross-sector collaboration, which means similar to an Office of Violence Prevention here in the United States, they have REACH, which is kind of the hub that coordinates and incubates all these programs to determine who would be best served to provide this service for that group of individuals in their time of need, if that makes sense. So you may have somebody that may not fit completely in this pocket, but we're going to find somebody that can come over here and help take care of those individuals, whether that be temporary housing, mercy services, things like that. But they're an absolute resource to make sure that they tie all those loops together and give those people the help they need for the folks struggling. And lastly, the takeaway is they're able to integrate all of their data with the health services and youth services and community programs, which I know that there's been conversations in and around Casper core data and a couple other things where we would share our data in there. We got to figure out what that looks like, because there are some confidentiality issues as to, especially when it comes to youth or juveniles, some of our stuff that we have in the police department, what we can share. And then similar to our DDAX model, we develop what we call hotspots, revisit those every 90 days to see if we've had any impact. Whether you're going down there as a 24/7 crisis response, you're sending law enforcement down there to do targeted enforcement thing, and then go back every 90 days and revisit that. Overall, I believe their success comes from blended data, not just police alone. And I think that we have a lot of businesses and organizations in and around Casper that are already doing good things, and I think continue to try to get everybody to the table, come up with a pretty successful way forward.
So I was gonna go over the key takeaways for Casper and then invite the Collective Trust, Leanne and Christy to come over and talk about the recommendations for continued success. So some of the key takeaways that we found was, and I think that the sheet hit that, the strong collaboration across city and police and community partners. They all worked really well together. They had a transparent data model, which helped so that they could all communicate and they could all share data. That's something that we can work on here. Youth engagement is crucial for long-term community health, and they really focus on that. If you have you grow your healthy community essentially. And balance strategies with prevention, intervention, and enforcement, those produce the best safety outcomes. And with that, I think Leanne's going to talk about the recommendations.
Well, thank you for taking the time and space to let us talk a little bit more about the Natrona Council for Safety and Justice, which we often lovingly refer to as NCSJ. So you'll probably hear that come out of our mouth a couple of times. The Youth Mental Health Collective, and how our recent Edmonton exchange through Peace in Our Cities has further informed and strengthened our direction moving forward.
Since late 2021, NCSJ has convened regularly to address the complex needs of adults experiencing mental health or behavioral health challenges, substance abuse, or involvement with the justice system or the institutional settings here in Detroit. 2024, this work intentionally expanded to include the Youth Mental Health Collective, recognizing the importance of early intervention and seamless support across all age groups.
So the Peace in Our Cities group that went to Edmonton when we returned, we definitely gained some valuable insights into cross-agency collaboration and a coordinated community response. And what we observed we believe aligns closely with the infrastructure that's already been established within NCSJ, only it's been scaled up and strengthened with some formal agreements. So with this in mind, we see some significant opportunities to partner with both the city, the county, in order to reduce duplication, streamline efforts, and build an integrated approach to community well-being. So for NCSJ, this is also particularly timely because opportunity for us to really broaden our scope and pull other people in while still ensuring agency ownership of new emerging initiatives. So to better understand our current initiatives and the way we see this work sort of coming together, we developed this, and I'm sorry to going in, but we developed this map. You should have it in your packet. I also have hard copies if you want it. And there's a brief description of our initiatives that you'll get after the meeting if you want to kind of dive into those individual things. But we want to explain that map to you now.
Yes. Does everyone have? Yes,
Have a copy.
perfect. So I think the goal of the two groups is really to align and ensure that we are not asking already very busy community leaders to meet again with really similar goals. And so we've created this map so we can demonstrate how we think these two initiatives or entities can align. So the leadership team is here on top, and this is really going to help us both broaden our scope and help determine the direction of where the community wants to lead. So, NCSJ has a good infrastructure. We are looking to enhance and support what is being recommended. So everything down and to the left is what's currently already being initiated, met upon, started with the NCSJ work, and that has included the juvenile efforts that started back in 2024. So the areas that are highlighted in blue are areas that we think really align with the team that went to Edmonton and with their specific recommendations where they fit into this map and how we could move the work forward.
And then if you look off to the right, there's a section off to the right focused on community-wide violence prevention. This section illustrates how new initiatives can connect to like our broader framework while being led and implemented by any agency.
So yes, so they've specifically talked about the expansion of we have a current mobile crisis through CWCC that's starting to work with Casper Police Department. It's very new. It's, you know, the infrastructure is still being built, but the recommendation is then to build that into a 24/7 crisis diversion pilot program. So you can see those two really align with each other. Edmonton really talked about the continued advancement of the youth third space, which we have that group and they're working on that initiative as well. Expanding that mental health collective that's already being established to really look at those wraparound services and the coordination of the service delivery. And as the chief spoke about, that improved data sharing and that evaluation through implementation programs such as Core Data. We have just recently signed the agreement with CWCC and Core Data. So we will start building out what that looks like for each agency that wants to participate within the city. It is very HIPAA compliant, youth focused. So I don't foresee any issues with the agencies that do want to put data in there that we can share and build that infrastructure.
So with the expansion of NCSJ to include some of the peace in our city interests and a broader collaboration between city and county, we are here requesting supports for a variety of things.
So we're kindly asking
Kindly requesting.
to have an assignment of a city councilor or city employee to the NCSJ leadership team. We feel that's important for the city to be aware of and supporting the initiatives moving forward. Support and participate in the Casper Blueprint for Violence Prevention, which will be led by Anna Kinder and the Public Health Department. Provide in-kind support through partnerships with the Parks and Rec, Code Enforcement, the Casper Police Department to reinforce and support those community-led efforts. And consider funding the expansion of the current crisis intervention programs. That could include two very specific things. Looking at the expansion of mobile crisis, what we currently have in its baby infrastructure, to a true 24/7 diversion crisis team program. And another example of something that could be funded is emergency funds for the situation table for those high risk, high needs individuals that have been identified by the community members as high risk, high acuity need to this community. So I think those are two very tangible ways that we can move forward in a collaborative effort, supporting what this team came back from Edmonton and support the efforts that have been continued on and initiated through NCSJ since 2021.
We also want to invite, really any council member and or any member of the staff of the city of Casper or the county is welcome to get involved in any of the initiatives listed on the map or on the detailed information. We really invite you to participate in whatever way you want to. So with that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for your continued support, and we look forward to deepening the partnership. Anything else, team? Questions?
Yeah. So put it up, yeah. Pat.
So in the collaboration in resources, do you, one department, say the police department or fire department, being increased by, I'll throw a number out of $100,000 a year in a budgeting process, make some of these things happen? Then secondly, do you see the ability of the trust coming forward with additional resources? I know you're heavily invested, so I'm not saying that, but I'm wondering, are there other opportunities? Because just watching the Appropriations Committee yesterday on the Department of Health, I don't think we can expect any opportunities from the state coming down the line to help with any of these initiatives. And I'm truly concerned about our own city, county, Department of Health. What will happen in the next session, so.
Sure.
So, thank you, Mayor, Counselor. So when I look at the, obviously staffing still an issue for us, but I think things can be done from a budget neutral piece from our personnel, where we can adjust some personnel to address some of these things on a temporary basis, to actually see what that workload's gonna look like before we come back and have any legitimate asks as to costs or equipment needs, if that makes sense. So I think there's some small piece to that. Refocus our personnel when we get to a point.
Keep
Try
the
to
checks
tackle
up.
this without spending any money other than the personnel that we've already budgeted for. That's not to say we wouldn't have an ask later down the road, depending on what this looks like, but in the short term, I think we could get some things done without any significant costs.
Thank you, Counselor. Similarly, I would say on the Parks and Rec side of things, because we are very involved in the youth initiatives in particular, I also think that at least initially we'll absorb some of those, extra initiatives and time and resources needed until we understand sort of what the workload increase could be, and don't anticipate a financial ask for our department at this time. Could change again, depending on the direction that we end up going with third spaces. But for now, we're hoping to be able to just absorb that into current resources and monitor what the increase in workload looks like.
And I appreciate that. Just trying to look down the road to keep this thing moving and hopefully get similar results that Edmonton did. But I think, with the Chiefs' leadership, I've seen, you can feel a dramatic change in attitude with the department as a whole. And I think that bodes well, not only for the leadership, but the department. But I think we'll hit, my belief is, we'd probably hit a critical mass before the next budget. And I think we should be prepared to pull our own weight. I don't know if we'll get much response from the county on the sheriff's side of things, but I don't, maybe we will. So.
Mayor, Council, so wear a number of different hats here. I would just say with the crisis response team up at Central, it's still very nascent in its existence. And so I think the intent would eventually be to lessen the burden on the police department by allowing non-sworn individuals to respond to crisis. So just to echo some of the comments that have been made, I think at this point, it's probably premature for this group or any other group to come with a specific ask until we kind of flesh out kind of what that program would look like. I think you're preaching to the choir when you say that, there's concern about the state funding, because a lot of what we do, whether it's in the municipal court diversion program or some of the crisis diversion that we're doing, it's very dependent upon the state Department of Health contracts. And so we just had testimony on that, and there'll be more discussions in January. So I think that's where you start, trying to preserve that. But to echo again the comments that I made down the line, that could certainly change.
Other questions, Kyle?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't really have any questions. Sounds like this is a conversation we're going to pick up later once the team's had a chance to fully flesh out some of those more precise recommendations and any financial impacts and stuff. But I do really appreciate everyone who took the time to go. I appreciate, Jai, my understanding is your organization picked up the tab, so very thankful for that. I'm very interested, Chief, in the 24/7 crisis services. Would love to see what that looks like and get your insight in regards to how they collaborate with dispatch and, how we determine which calls go to which organization. If it can result in us being more fiscally responsible with our limited resources by, handling folks differently and achieving better outcomes and relying less on incarceration and maybe leaning more heavily into some of these other services, I'm all for it, especially as is mentioned with resources getting more tight over time. Want to make sure we're being as efficient as possible. So yeah, I just really appreciate everyone that went and looking forward to having some more granular conversations in the future.
Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
Want to add in about the 24/7 that we did the ride-alongs up there in Edmonton. It was fantastic to see how those people interacted with the people who were having a crisis. They were known on the street. People knew that they were there to help them. Were very kind and generous to the people. We stopped at one. We saw a gal that had fallen over and didn't look like she was breathing, and we got out and made sure she was okay. Gave them snacks. Gave another gal a ride back to her homeless shelter. Little things like that. At the same time, more intense calls. They talked to about some of the more intense calls that they had had with crisis and where they had have mental health professionals intervene with them. But seeing that level of care and then coming home and finding out that we've got one that's in its infancy was great for me to see how a lot of stuff that NCSJ and other people have already started here in Casper, how Edmonton has made those things work. And I think it gave us a lot of insight on what we can do to make sure that the programs that we're putting together here are successful. And it's nice to have that collaboration with Reach up there in Edmonton. We can contact them and get answers, and it's going to help a lot.
Anything other? Yeah, Michael, and then I'll get you, Kyle, please.
So thanks, Ray. So one question I did have, the homeless coalition, where, if at all, do you see that fitting into this scheme here? I don't know if you've had a chance to think about that or talk about that. And I haven't been through the entire exchange report, but any thoughts about that?
Thank you for that question. I think we will continue to support each other and continue to be a liaison for one another. I think it's important that those two, the goals are maybe just a bit different in the way they approach how they're tackling the issue, but the overall issue is a healthier, safer, community and more productive, safer individuals. So I think we can continue to be liaisons and supporters. I don't know if Mr. Nelson has another opinion on that as well, but I definitely think collaboration is important.
Mayor and Council. So I don't disagree with that at all. I think when you look at the flow chart, the way I perceive this is that NCSJ is going to put this framework in place. And I don't think the expectation is that the trust would do all the heavy lifting, but they would facilitate the heavy lifting. And so as we break it down into various buckets of work, I think then assigning that out to the entity or organization that is best suited to address that. And so I could see the city's homelessness initiative maybe being best suited to address certain areas. And so that would just kind of slot into the overall framework, I think. But again, to echo a comment earlier, we don't want to take our leaders of our organizations, cities, counties, and make them attend a dozen meetings a month. That's just not a good use of anyone's time. So to the extent that we can be synergistic and work together, I think it'll be more efficient. So that's, I think, our discussions have been around how we can meld those efforts together.
Thanks, Mayor. I guess I just wanted to point out one of the other things that is very exciting for me is this focus on generating data, meaningful data that can inform metrics. One of the other partners, I'm sure they're already at the table through the NCSJ, is the hospital. Lance Porter has reported, I believe, to the Homelessness Coalition in recent meetings that, especially during the winter, they have people that are without transportation that call 911 simply to get transportation across town. There's no emergency, but it's obviously a very expensive service that adds to the $50 million plus in uncompensated care that the hospital bears. And then we all as consumers of their services pay inflated pricing because they're having so much uncompensated care. And so I would just, this is all really good for the city to be very efficient with our own funding, but I hope there's other partners like the hospital that'll come to the table and can realize cost savings through these initiatives, and through those cost savings can help contribute towards sustainability of these programs so that we're all better off financially, and our people are hopefully healthier, more homed, and in better situations. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. I agree. One other recommendation that I forgot to suggest is that this group return to the council every 3 to 6 months, whatever you guys think is appropriate or as needed with progress reports. We really want to start or proactively communicating back what is working, what isn't working, what the data is, and really demonstrate the progress. So I would just take that as a consideration as well, if you would.
I'm gonna get Amber first. Go ahead, Kyle.
So I haven't noticed like the Y Boys and Girls Club and the rescue mission. And I don't attend all the meetings either, but I was just wondering, are they involved in part of the collaboration?
Yeah, I think they are. I think that it's kind of in a different way. So when you look at a lot of youth serving organizations, part of the issues that they run into is the times that people want to meet and are convenient for them, they're serving youth. So I have found them to be extremely collaborative when we go with a specific request, of can you partner with us on this particular thing? Can you partner with us on this issue? And then they all stay really well connected through the communication that we're sending out and the things that are happening with Youth Mental Health Collective.
I would say,
Great partners, they really are.
echo that through various levels of NCSJ. We have various levels of really intentional partnership. I think there's always areas that we can bring them into the fold and continue to support each other. But I would say through the situation table, through some of those really frontline work, through that frontline work, we have some really diligent partners that are working tirelessly with some of our agencies. I would like to see more engagement there. I would like to see more engagement, and we will continue to work on bringing more individuals into that broader leadership scope. That's the goal of 2026 as well.
Thank you for the presentation. The only thing I really have to add, I agree largely with what everyone has said here, is that I definitely would support the addition of a counselor staff person to the leadership team. I think that in order for us to make this meaningful and make the city's connection to it meaningful, we want to be involved at that level. And so it looks like there's some direction requested. Some things in these recommendations seem like we could pretty easily provide direction now, and some of them maybe require future conversation, but some of those, kind of budget neutral impacts and that sort of thing that are on this list, and I'd support moving those forward so that the city formalizes in some way our commitment to the group.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it sounds like there's direction requested. Amber put a post on. We repeat that one more time. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I will if you.
No, I'm fine. So it sounds like that we want to move forward with, at least for sure, making sure that we are supporting them. One, it sounds like having a staff person or a council member participate on the leadership team. Yeah.
Love to be on that leadership team.
Okay.
Since I'm already involved with Peace in Our Cities, I think it'd be a good fit.
Council okay with Vice Mayor continuing on the leadership team? Okay. Awesome.
Need both? Like a staff connection too, do you think? Or are we okay with just a council connection?
What do you think?
Mayor, counselor, I do think it would be beneficial to have a staff member as well, just to make sure that our line staff stays well connected and understands the need and has a little bit better understanding of the resources on the ground that could be allocated. So
Any recommendations would be good for staff wise, police department, somebody?
Mayor,
And I'm kind of put you on the spot now. I'm sorry.
well, my inclination is to say, if somebody from the city manager's office, such as our chief of staff, however, I don't feel like it's appropriate for me to make that resource
Okay.
decision,
Okay.
given that our new city manager will be starting next week.
Right.
So, it could be a tentative recommendation and then she could
Yeah,
modify.
Mayor, so I do intend to be part of that starting in January. I have been in the past, but I haven't attended as regularly, so certainly I'll be there. I think I do see the chiefs at a lot of these meetings or their designees, fire and police, so that they see.
So we should be able to have that filled.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it usually any of these meetings, there's multiple staff from the city that are attending. So to interim city managers, certainly defer appointing an official staff liaison, but I think in the interim, rest assured,
We're
covered.
We got it covered. Yeah, and I would agree, and I hope council would agree, we can maybe find one person when Janine gets here, to have that one designated staff member. That's the point of contact would be great. Anything else for the direction? Is that it?
Mayor, in the absence of a specific funding ask. However, I will say that if there is an initiative that council is particularly interested in and wants to dedicate funding, that would be important information for us to have as we go into our budget process. So keep that in mind. I'm sure that a little bit more information may be forthcoming soon. I think it is important to note that Edmonton has been at this for 15 years, and of course we're just starting out, right? But there are some exciting things already happening in the community, and certainly now as the NCSJ acting sort of as the reach for Casper, right? The hub that is sort of combining all of the resources through the community together in a more organized way. Again, if there is initiative that the council is really excited or supportive of, that you would like to allocate resources to, knowing that would be helpful.
So council, if we want to think about that, as we're kind of moving to the new year into the budget session coming up, we can have that conversation around what and if we can provide, whether it's same kind or anything else. Did we miss anything?
Do we want to commit to some sort of cadence for updates from the group, so that we can just get them scheduled?
Krista, what did you say? Every 3 to 6 months? Is that what you guys thought?
I think 3 months might go pretty quickly, so.
You want to do 6 months? 6 months, okay with everybody for a report? Okay, that sounds good. We'll get something. Yeah, Jai, you want to? Sorry, we have a microphone going. Get it on record.
Are you shocked that I have additional thoughts?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say to Lima, the point that you raised, if there are certain initiatives that you want more information about or that you would like for us to explore further, the breadth of ideas is vast in the collective, but we didn't want to inundate you necessarily. And so maybe, we can set ourselves to that 6-month schedule, but I think I'm going to speak for the group, like feel free to ask us to come back at any time or just make a request for further information and we can share that. We can set up meetings. We can do whatever is needed to support information requests. So happy to have the 6-month, but also happy to come more. You guys can just chat as much as you like.
I guess just so that we can provide something a little more substantive, the thing that appeals to me, that seems like probably has the potential to be most impactful, is the 24/7 crisis support. I've personally seen individuals needing that support in downtown Casper, personally made phone calls to try to get people that support. I think that, in terms of the budget implications for PD, for the hospital, for the detention center, to me, that is a great place to focus some efforts. So I would be really interested in scoping that further and digging into what is the path to scale that, and what is the, financial burden to make that happen? What are the potential offsetting savings that we might realize, and just kind of put some real pen to paper on that to make that, a little more tangible for us to scope out.
So that's a great recommendation. Is that really focused area that we can look at as far as the
That's my favorite
24/7
focus area.
crisis.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can come back with that. Is there a particular timeline, like the implications for your budget conversations? Is there a certain timeline where you need answers back to inform
Mayor,
those
Counselor,
discussions?
I would recommend February
February.
at the latest if there's going to be financial implications from an operating budget
Is
standpoint.
that like
Right.
beginning of February, end of February?
How about the middle?
Okay, like the
We'll split
14th.
hair.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
I'm down
I
with
love
that.
it. We can divide it.
Yeah, why don't we?
Saturday, so don't.
The 13th.
No, yeah, so so I think maybe the middle of February, we can kind of look at the conversation as we
Okay.
ramp it up.
I'm committing our team to that. Yeah, okay.
Well, since we have Jai up here again, I thought I'll ask just a quick question about, maybe it's a quick question, about, so the impetus, I think, for a lot of this work were the 2 youth violence incidents that happened some time ago. So I guess my question is, what, was there something other than the 24/7 crisis response? Was there something that Edmonton, that you all, as a team, you felt was particularly impactful on that aspect of youth violence? I mean, violence is an issue, adults or youth, but I'm just curious about what was the most impactful that you thought on youth violence between youth?
I'm gonna let Chief
Sure.
answer that question.
Mayor, Counselor, thank you for that question. The one thing that, I mean, they were all good programs, but one that stuck out the most is RAP Ed. That's what they call it. It offers support, prevention, and intervention to youth and their families, not just to the youth, but to identify root causes of social disorder, and then tries to get them the resources to get them a more productive way of life. It's a shortened version of it, but I thought that program was kind of
Rap Ed?
RAP Ed,
Okay, thank you.
just like it sounds, 1P.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the chief? Okay, so it sounds like we have the direction to council staff. Move that forward, consider it, say, thanks, chief. Yeah, one more thing. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna, sorry, just to connect some dots too. There was also a recommendation in there about city collaboration on the development of the blueprint for violence prevention. And so the idea there is that that's kind of the comprehensive strategy that ties these different community efforts together. And so RAP Ed being an example of a program, but not necessarily the reflection of the overarching strategy. So Anna's just going to tell you a little bit about her ideas around the strategy too, just so you know that all of this is interconnected. But as you said, I mean, prevention looks like supporting your community. It doesn't necessarily look like pulling the weapon from their hand, so anyways, please go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Counselors. So one of the things that we did take out of there was the blueprint for prevention of violence and looking at violence from both the perspective of internal and external. It was a very related public health response that they did it. So very easily to look at like the social determinants of health and how that looks. And so that coordinated effort that we've been talking about for quite some time, bringing in kind of things in together, working towards the same goal and objective. While we have very great activities that are happening, we need that big overarching. So we have that directive, the timeline, and everything that goes along with that. So it's in the infancy of that. And as we put the leadership team for NCSJ and getting input from community partners, we'll be able to make that a very well-rounded kind of situation. Having participation from multiple departments and agencies and you all and county, et cetera. Moving towards that common systems change, that upstream that we're looking for.
Sienna?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Are there further commitments we need to make on that front outside of appointing staff and council to the leadership team? Is that to be determined, or do you need some sort of commitment from us to say like, yes, we will collaborate with you on the blueprint?
I think it would be great to have confirmation that the city is willing to collaborate. I think once the blueprint is established, it would be great for the member parties to the commitment to sign it or, establish an MOU around it or something, but that's down the line. But I think commitment now helps, and the commitment would come through the appointment of those two members to the NCSJ leadership team, I think, right?
So I think verbally right tonight, we're committing to it, saying, yes, we're behind it 100%, and that we will commit staff and a council member to be a part of that. And then you're thinking down the road, maybe some type of an MOU?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna use that as like a general term, but I think once we establish, as a community, this blueprint or whatever we decide to call it, it would be great to have everybody kind of come together and say, okay, we're committed to this. This is how we're gonna move forward. And then we can also, lay out the programs that are in place or will be developed to support the execution of the strategy.
Yeah, please.
One
We're good.
finer point on that. So do you anticipate there being a cost to the development of the strategy through a consultant or anything like that we need to, if we're saying we're committing, are we committing dollars or is it time and resources and information?
I don't want to misspeak, but so I'm gonna let Anna answer your question.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, so it is something that is just basically being absorbed at this time. The Board of Health did indicate the strong need to address mental health, and so we'll utilize those funds to get it initiated and launched and things like that. But then at that point, it probably will have expense to it, but right now it's just being absorbed much like the rest of the work that's happening.
Okay.
Time, just time.
Thank you. Anything else? So it sounds like our direction, appointing city staff and the council member leadership team, consider the budget as we move forward here into February. Focus on the 24/7 crisis response. We'll be doing an update in February, it sounds like, for the consideration for the budget and what we need to talk about, what that looks like. And then looks like there was a direction for every 6-month updates. Does that sound about right?
Yep. Very good.
Thank you also.
Thanks, appreciate it. Yes.
Before we move on, I just would like to note there's a stunning picture of the skyline of Edmonton in there. And an unbelievable, I know it's not on the scale of our bridge, but Cumming Bridge, but it certainly looks similar in design, except not double bridges like that. But
Yeah, cool.
it looks right in place with the background of the city. I just wanted to comment.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody on the team that went to Edmonton to do that. Thank you for the work that you guys are doing, which is so critical to our community. So we appreciate you. All right, moving on. Opioid question and answer for our task force.
Thank you, Mayor. At the request of several of our counselors, this is really intended to be sort of a question and answer session so that members of council can learn from the members of the opioid task force more about the entities, the programs, and the considerations that went into decisions regarding allocation of the opioid settlement funds. And so as a reminder, the opioid task force members include Councilor Kyle Gamroth, Councilor Brantley Haskins, Commissioner Peter Nicolason, Commissioner Casey Coates, and Carol King, who is a subject matter expert in the community. And so many of those members are here to help support in answering questions that council might have. And then, of course, assuming that after tonight's discussion, council is still supportive of the task force recommendations, then staff will prepare funding agreements for council's formal adoption at a future business meeting. So with that, I'd like to open it up for councilors to ask questions of the task force members. Any members of the task force that are in the audience can kindly come up to the podium and be prepared to
So if
maybe
you're on the,
help answer
so
some
if you're on the
questions.
task force, maybe we could have you guys come sit up here. Would be great. Is it just you, Peter?
Peter.
Okay.
I was gonna come.
So let's go ahead and open up. If there's any questions for Kyle, Brandy, Commissioner Nicolason. to have that, or Eric, or I guess Casey's not here, so anybody has some questions they want to open up to?
So, thank you, Mayor. Really trying to understand, so the funding requests were for 18 months or 2 years, and that got pared back to initially just 1 year. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was the perspective of the group that because we have such limited finite funding, we may get more in the future, but at the present time between the county and the city, we have roughly just under $3 million. And so it was the opinion of the group that since some of these are novel concepts and we're not sure what degree of success they would have, we just wanted to stick to 1 year of funding to set aside 2/3 of the funding for future use. And that gives us 1 year to kind of pilot these projects. And then depending on how successful they all are, we can use the rest of the funding to, really maximize our return on investment. So we didn't want to kind of blow our wad in one go. We wanted to set aside some for some, short-term sustainability for the most effective programs.
Questions? Yeah.
I would just be interested hearing from folks who were involved in the process, outside of the sort of philosophy around the time frame, which I think makes good sense. What else are we prioritizing? It's such a broad sort of spectrum of things that folks could come forth with. So in your discussions, where were you trying to aim the funds in terms of the impact for the most part?
Don't jump out of your chairs, folks.
My question's for Peter.
Yeah. I'll take a first pass if I'm missing anything, Peter. I don't want to put you on the chair.
You came all this way, so.
You're the committee chairman.
The funding certainly was restricted to, treatment prevention and handling of opioid use disorder, but otherwise it was fairly broad in its language. So, we did get kind of a spectrum of proposals. We had an RFP that the group had worked with to kind of dial it in as much as possible, but we still left it kind of intentionally broad because we didn't want to, tie people's hands too much. If they had some really creative out-of-the-box solutions, we wanted to hear that and make sure they felt comfortable responding to the RFP with those ideas. There were a couple, one of the proposals, for instance, hinged on the hiring of a police officer dedicated towards this sort of work. And so in those cases, we felt like we can't even get our own police department fully staffed. And so it just wasn't feasible, in our opinion, to set aside an officer strictly for these purposes, because we're going to, any officer that we hire, there's a variety of needs that we need them for. And so there were conditions like that kind of we took into consideration and kind of informed our approach. But other than that, outside the RFP, that was kind of our guiding compass throughout the whole thing. Peter, is there anything I'm missing that you?
No, I think Councilor Gamroth's right. We went into this with an open mind. Carol King, who tonight is our subject matter expert, and we were going to throw all the hard questions to her.
Right.
But she assisted us a lot, and Councilor Gamroth also has some experience in the field more generally. We just listened to proposals, and we were super impressed with the breadth and variety we saw. We didn't go in thinking, well, we're going to devote this much to treatment and this much to education. We didn't do that at all. We did try to say we need to set aside some funds for future years. We don't know if any additional funding is going to come in. But other than that, we just kind of did what we felt made sense. And I think it is correct to say that this is a pilot year. And I think that the committee hopes to receive a lot of interesting feedback, both wins and losses, from not only these recipients, but we're going to likely send out another RFP and see if folks can build on that or bring a better mousetrap.
I did, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I also wanted to tack onto that. So while we were like certainly open and receptive to a variety of different proposals and concepts, we also were very, wanted to make sure that the proposals that were in front of us had some sort of evidentiary basis, that they weren't just sort of theoretical, that they had some empirical evidence to support them. And that's why I was really thankful we had Carol King on the group with us. I was glad she applied and was happy to have her on the group. I met Carol at CWCC when I worked there. She used to manage their medication-assisted treatment program, which is the provision of Suboxone and other medications for people that have opioid use disorder. So she's got a wealth of knowledge in that regard. When I left CWCC, she was the director of residential programming up there, and so involved on the 90-day treatment side of things. So just very well-rounded and has a ton of clinical experience to bring to the table. And so me and her specifically were really mindful of SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration for the country, has a list of programming on their website that is empirically based. It's got empirical evidence to support it, and then there's other programs that have less evidence, but they're promising. It's something like that, empirical but promising. I don't know. They have different categories, and so we wanted to make sure, especially for many of the treatment providers, that they were following that their curriculum or that their services that they were providing were verified and sort of supported by the guiding institutions in the country. So yeah, we were open to different ideas, but certainly we wanted there to be a foundation of evidentiary support for the things that these guys wanted to be doing.
Did you want to jump in real quick?
Mayor, thank you. So my role is more of just staff support. I listened to the presentations. I did not necessarily participate in the decision-making in terms of allocation of the funding, but I do want to add that in observing all of this, the task force was really also very mindful of sustainability of the programming. And so Commissioner Nicolason kind of brushed on it very briefly, but there was a lot of conversation about could these funds help develop a program that could sustain even after the funding potentially goes away. And so I thought that was a really good sort of condition to consider, that if there's not future funding, they can still maintain with these funds developing the program to begin with.
So, thank you for that, and thank you, Commissioner. Funding request number 1 was One Natrona United Against Opioid. So, in that recommendation, there's a number of different agencies that are included. Is there further breakdown of where, like Kind Grounds, do they get 10 grand or out of it, or and then, or is the majority, I would hope the majority goes probably to the Health Department, Central Wyoming Counseling Center.
You guys know what the breakout is for that?
I was actually going to take advantage of the benefit we have of having the health department director in the audience. So didn't know, if the mayor would agree. She would certainly be able to, is more qualified to speak to that proposal than I think either of us. And so I'd welcome her.
Mayor, I could maybe add a little
Okay.
sure to it. So our approach to doing the funding agreements, specifically for the One Natrona group, would be to have that agreement between the city and the health department, because they did submit the application. I have had conversations with both Ms. Kinder and Mr. Kauser up at Central Wyoming Counseling Center, and the direction I got from the group was that this would be more or less a block grant to be used for any purposes that were in the application. I think they've had internal conversations about how they intend to apportion those funds. Mr. Kauser did indicate that because of some funding that he's recently received, more of that can get pushed to the health department and to Kind Grounds. But the intent would be then to build in some reporting requirements in the funding agreements to where prior to the next cycle of grant making, they would come back to the city and ostensibly the county as well to report on here's how we utilize the funds and here's the benefits and the data that we were able to glean. So she is in the back, Ms. Kinder, so if I've so if I've misspoke, correct me.
Anna, do you want to add anything? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Mr. Mayor and councilors, thank you for that. We did have a recent meeting, and one of the things, the budget has shifted a little bit for our approach. We are not doing the wastewater. That was deemed something that we did not want to pursue at this time, and switched it over to dealing with some of the high acuity that we're dealing with, our maternal child health and intimate partner violence kind of situation. So each one of the partners has a 1 to 2 staff members. The majority of the funding, obviously staff time is expensive, but we have supplies in there for naloxone. Currently it's available from the state for free, but we put funding in there just to cover us in case that should change anytime in the near future. I have no idea how long that will last. And then dealing with some of the services that CAP and Kind Grounds provides, but really trying to take that Kind Grounds to a 5 days a week rather than what they're doing now. And then the recovery house options that are being discussed. So we've discussed it, kind of negotiated with each other, but it is broken out amongst us. Having wanted a little more guidance, it actually has worked out very well to us. So.
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks, Anna, for being here to be able to speak to that. I'll say just while on the subject of this proposal, one of the things that really appealed to me about this one was I really appreciated these organizations coming together and submitting a joint proposal. The funding for the opioid use dollars needed to go to treatment, prevention, or care recovery. And their proposal, the way I read it at least, was trying to cover all those bases. You know, they had partners at the table that handle all of those things. And I appreciate that because having worked in mental health in this community, the reason people get lost between the cracks is because they're at a service provider seeking services that are not offered there, and then you need to provide that warm handoff over to someone else. And so I really appreciated the joint proposal because it sounds like these folks were all going to work very much in sync with each other and, you know, prevent as few people as possible from falling in between the cracks. And so that's one thing that I, gave high marks on for that proposal was the fact that, they weren't going to drop people. Well, whatever the service was they needed, they had someone at the table that could provide it. So.
What, Pat?
Kind of a follow-up, but not so much, but I've been at meetings where some of the providers have had frustrations with our transit system and being able to buy the transit cards and all of that. And when you mentioned, handoff, I think transportation from point A to point B can be a problem, but I don't know if any of those things have actually been resolved on our side or not.
Go ahead.
So actually that was a very strong topic that was brought up during the SIM Part 2 and the summit, that there was a transportation. So I think that report is coming out someday in the near future that will address some of that and some additional strategies that went along with it. But yes, those groups, everything is kind of touching each other at this point in the game, I think, so.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
So I was curious on family practice, University of Wyoming. I'm not aware what treatment plans they already are doing. I should know better, but is in it for the expansion of integrated substance use disorder treatment. I mean, do we know, does the task force, the group, know how many people they're currently treating over at UW? And are they treating 100 a year? Or?
I don't know, Mr. Mayor. I don't recall that specific number. topic was generally discussed during the interview, but I don't remember if either in their proposal or in our interview, if they provided the specific number. I guess I'd just say one of the things that I think the committee members were really keen on with respect to this proposal is the educational component, meaning part of this is training medical health providers how to deal with opioid and substance abuse. And so it was the education of those folks in that arena, medical providers, that we thought was pretty neat. And I don't know if Councillor Gamroth or Haskins have anything to add to that.
There's a number in my head, but I don't remember if it was UW Family Practice, so I don't want to tell you. But they already have a very well-established program. They're just looking to expand it. So regardless of how long the funding lasts, the more they get right now is just more that they will get. And yeah, the key for their was we're going to teach doctors, and when those doctors leave, they'll know how to do this. So that was really exciting for us because no matter how long it lasts, there will be that many more doctors who know how to deal with it. So that was our focus. But there was a lot in regards to Hep C treatment and all these other treatments and the pregnant mothers that was very appealing to us. But for their program, I want to say they had like 80 active pregnant. But like I said, I can't.
79.
Is it? Thank you. I was like, I don't know where that number came in my head. But it is
79 and it's their number, but it says 125 active patients in the MOUD. 30% of those are involved in the legal system. They conduct 1,200 visits per year under that program, which is the medication for opioid use disorder. And then there's a second part that discusses the pregnancies and something like more than 140 in 2025 to date.
Thank you, Amber. And say, I know there were numbers somewhere. They're in there.
Then lastly, if I could, Mayor, on the Salvation Army, I'm aware of that program just broadly, and I think that was, in my mind, a good pick on what they're trying to do with women in particular, and trying to teach them and help them. And then that'll lead to a transition, possibly to Seton House, or someplace else where they can continue to get services and rebuild their lives. So, appreciate those of you that served on that. So,
all right, last call. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your work on that committee to put this together for us. We really, really appreciate it. It's something that a lot of organizations, we've been talking about it and waiting for it for the last 2-3 years. So thank you for that work. Thanks for coming over, Commissioner. Appreciate it. Take care. Okay. Let's go ahead and go to the Daniels Fund grant.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, tonight I am asking really for your retroactive support for submission of a grant to the Daniels Fund for the Washington Park tennis facility. Admittedly, staff in the transition with interim positions, and the fact that we have applied for a number of different grants for Washington Park, mistakenly recalled that you had already given us approval to submit the grant to the Daniels Fund when in fact you had not. So that grant was submitted December 2nd by the deadline, and now we are asking you to ratify that submission if you so choose. And of course, if you do not, we can withdraw our application. But it is for $150,000. The intention of the grant is to help fill a funding gap and get us back to the original scope of the project, which was to construct 6 new tennis courts with lighting When we awarded the contract, the funding was such that we had to remove some scope items so that we could afford it. And then we have seen some reductions in grant awards from the USTA as well as Adjourn County Rec Joint Powers Board. And so we have a small gap that we can address by either cutting additional scope from the project or through this Daniels Fund grant. And so we've been working with the Daniels Fund for quite a long time, about 6 months, and gotten to the point where they did formally invite us to apply, which we are optimistic is a good sign. And so that is where we're at, but it was a staff mistake to move forward with a grant request of this amount without asking council for permission to do so first. And so I'm coming to you with that request now.
How does everybody feel?
Ratified.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. I don't know, sorry, Nick, I guess I should have said, any questions for Nick or Zulima?
Just a quick, so Zulima, if I'm adding up, just kind of ballpark there with the total construction contract amount, there's still a little gap there. So what are your thoughts about how to meet the rest of that?
Mayor, Councilor, so in addition to the Daniels Fund grant, which would more than make up that amount and then allow us to even add some scope items back in, we do have another grant that you did approve submission to the U.S. Council of Mayors. And so that's an additional grant that if awarded would fill that funding gap.
So that's not listed on here.
No, it is not, because we haven't been given indications that will be awarded. And so lastly, if we needed to, we would cut scope from the project. We would remove elements of the project to bring it back within budget.
I get you. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Delima. Let's go ahead and put the industrial revenues bond.
Thank you. So tonight we are asking for council's consideration of industrial revenue bonds, also known as conduit debt, as a sort of new funding strategy for both the recruitment and the expansion of existing companies to Casper. And with that support or consideration, give staff direction to move forward in identifying projects and qualifying applicants to propose to council. So to provide more details on our proposal, I'd like to turn the time over to Liz Becker, our Community Development Director, and Jill Johnson, our Financial Services Director, maybe with some support from our City Attorney, Eric, to run you through the details of the proposed program. And again, we're requesting your support to advance the framework for this program into the future.
Hey, Jill.
Mayor, Councilor, especially it's going to be Liz. It's going to be up first. I'm just sharing my screen. See, I did. It's like little click them and fly away. Right? Now I got the little bulbs or the just for you guys. Okay, thank you. Members of council. Tonight, again, talking about a topic called industrial revenue bonds, conduit debt. I know you all are looking forward to this. So we decided to kind of do a little bit of history, which I like to always kind of set the stage. And then we do have a PowerPoint presentation that we're going to be taking you through. And the three of us are going to kind of trade off. It's some areas that are each of our areas of expertise, I would say. So I look back at economic development over the last 20 years. I was with CADA, and when we would work with projects that came to Casper, the typical deal was to do a loan with CADA, and we would look at trying to do a gap analysis and gap financing, and loans were a big deal for getting economic development projects done. And we would do capital investment. We'd always look at job creation. And the other thing that we would do with CADA, not just with the public funds through the the Economic Development Reuse, or the Joint Powers Board, but also through Forward Casper, we would do economic development like building roads. for private companies. We would also do grant applications with the Business Council, but a lot of those were also like road construction. Over the years, economic development projects have changed, but also more importantly, is our state is very conservative, as you well know, and what we will utilize as incentives. And even when we were kicking off projects like the old Yellowstone district, so many companies would come and say, how will you incentivize us to locate in Casper, Wyoming? And again, ideas like not having building permit fees, waiving property taxes, and even picking up tipping fees and some of the fees associated with utilities and tap grants or tap fees. And again, that was nothing that was allowed in most cases through our state statutes. And so we were saying to interested companies, we can't do it because that's not allowed. Well, truly over the last now 3 years, after you all challenged us to really come up with a revenue committee in-house, we've really taken a look, staff has, at ways to look at incentives with development, but also to look at key revenue strategies to make certain that as we look at companies and look at bringing business into the city of Casper, we are doing it with what is allowed through state statute. And I look at the work that our city attorney has done, really working deep into the statutes to see what is allowed by our law, what is allowed even within partnering with our municipal code, but really getting in deeper on this so that economic development truly can use, in some ways, some creative ideas with financing. Now, most recently, you all have approved us to move forward with something called URAs, urban renewal areas. And we are, in fact, very finalizing that contract, and we'll be bringing that forward for approval. But again, even URAs open up opportunities for revenue strategies and economic development. It was ideas that were brought forward to us from local businesses suggesting, hey, let's designate some areas where we need to see improvements here in Casper. You also, a year plus ago, helped us sponsor the Community Readiness Grant with the Wyoming Business Council to do all the utilities up to the property across from the event center. With that community readiness grant with the Wyoming Business Council, it had to be for public infrastructure. And I think that's what we're starting to see is what can the public aspect be that will help benefit local businesses so that we can eventually recruit to that property businesses that are not being tasked right off the top with putting in utilities, because that can just sink a deal quicker than anything when they're needing to look at in projects such as actually the building itself and the equipment, you know, and even workforce grants, which were a big ticket item 20 years ago. We don't see that as frequently now with economic development. You know, I look at the development with the Wyoming Sports Ranch. A lot of that was done privately, as you all are well aware. But we're also beginning to see more and more interest here in Casper coming into this office, into this community, saying, what else can you all do really as a city to help incentivize, help bring together some ideas for revenue and financing of these economic development projects. So thus we have the word conduit. In Latin, what does that mean? Ask Jill. Come on, come on. You're awake.
Conduit?
Conduit. What's conduit mean?
3 years. This is
I
really
know,
It's been a while
I know.
since I've taken Latin. So.
Never did. It's a good language, isn't it? Mrs. Sherman, Kelly Walsh High School. Remember that class? You're not, but conduit is, the Latin is bring together. So that is what we are doing this evening, is bringing together another revenue strategy for you all to consider in the form of industrial revenue bonds. Now with bonds, it's a big word, but we put together in the memo kind of an overview of what industrial revenue bonds or conduit debt is all about. But Jill wrote an outstanding section, I must say, in the financial considerations section of the memo that I want to draw your attention to. Bonds are called conduit debt because while the city is the issuer, and we'll talk about that tonight, the city does not have any liability for the payment of the bonds, does not act as a guarantee or a credit enhancement, and the debt does not count as municipal debt on the city of Casper. But it is an economic development tool that will help with potential funding at interest rates lower than commercial lending can provide. So yes, do we have interest by developers talking to us now about bonds? We sure do. So we want to bring you all forward kind of as to where we are, get some questions answered between myself, Jill, and Eric, and look at the opportunity to create, with your assistance, truly a process for seeing the use of industrial revenue bonds in the city of Casper. So starting through this, second, I have got some faces over text. So what we started off with is looking a little bit at an overview of what IRBs are. And again, getting a company to pitch us a project. And with this, again, we are many times looking at public improvements with some of these projects. Point B, a loan from an investor to a company. Again, from an investor to a company, not the city of Casper doing a loan like we've all seen recently with other institutions. But the loan proceeds and repayment flow through the government issuer, which is required by statute. That's us, the city, through a third-party trustee. So again, just to ensure with the third party that we are seeing the payments. It is an often misunderstood incentive for both recruitment and expansion of existing companies. Again, with economic development, not only are we always focused on recruiting new businesses to Casper, but we want to help existing ones expand. And we definitely want to see retention. Probably. What it is not. Otherwise, I was gonna be reading this. It is not a loan from the city to a company. Now, have we done loans? Yes. Our industrial revenue bonds loans? No, not from the city to an individual company. It is a way for the city to provide a loan guarantee. What it is not, again, a way for the city to provide a loan guarantee for the company's project. It is not a way for the city to provide credit enhancement or other financial backing, and it is not a direct investment by the city in a project. It is not an obligation of the city. So again, we're going to get into what that third party is all about. The city council must vote to approve the issuance of IRBs, again, statutorily required. The city does not lend its credit to an industrial revenue bond. The company must secure its own purchaser of IRBs. So we're talking about bigger projects here, as you can guess, where the company can purchase its own IRB. And again, larger companies have that capability to have bond attorneys with them and on their payroll. Unlike municipal bonds, no tax revenues are pledged to pay off the bonds. So again, we're not talking municipal bonds, we're talking industrial revenue bonds in this case. So why offer an IRB? We wanted to really hit the why. They are to encourage, again, business expansion and recruitment, job growth, and capital investment, because capital investment, again, creates the property taxes, it creates jobs with that, and we do see the improvement in our hope with the sales taxes. States have industrial revenue bonds, but again, the way they are defined within the state of Wyoming is again differently than we see in other states. And again, having done economic certification courses, it is amazing how different all the states are across the country in how these economic development incentives are set up. And, you know, I did so much of it in Oklahoma, totally different than the state of Wyoming. And again, we are very conservative, as you all well know on this, but we've started to dig deeper on ways. They are an inducement to encourage companies to locate or expand here in Casper, and we are truly interested in approaching this again with the City of Casper Council. They will help Casper be competitive for capital intensive projects by reducing risk and cost of locating here. And I think we can all identify some capital intensive projects that are located not necessarily here directly in Casper, but in some of our surrounding municipalities, but also ones that have been pretty public about wanting to be here. Some that are controversial in many cases, but capital intensive is a big driver for industrial revenue bonds. Only projects can be financed with industrial revenue bonds. The last bullet is the contrary to that. It is not used for working capital. It is used for projects. And again, that would be the capital aspect, primarily a lot with the equipment that will be put into some of these large projects. And again, the idea is to promote manufacturing, which is huge to our economy, economic, and again, that might be such things as workforce housing and commercial enterprises. And again, with commercial enterprises, that's where we see our sales tax opportunities to expand in Casper. Each project must be self-liquidating. It is not intended to authorize us as a municipality to operate any of these entities. But again, we want to induce and promote. The projects must meet the following purposes. These 4 points were identified in your council memo on the first page. And again, I've hit on a lot of this, but it's employment, it's expanding tax base, not only for sales and property, but other tax revenues, even with manufacturing taxes and some of the more exclusive ones that go with different types of industries. We are looking at, again, keeping our economy balanced among our major areas in the state of Wyoming, being agricultural, natural resources, business, commerce, and then just actually some international trade from within our city. And then again, promoting the development of those same assets. So not only recruiting, but again, promoting and retaining the companies that we already have in the Casper area, and bonds can assist them in their growth opportunities. Can a small business use an IRB? Because I think we're going to be asked that probably tomorrow after a media story. Does it have to be a huge, like Microsoft type deal? No, a small business is allowable, but again, not recommended for projects less than 2 million. So that's pretty much the tipping point on the types and size of businesses that would be interested in industrial revenue bonds. So they're used for larger capital projects. And at that point, our next speaker is going to talk about the tax status.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question real quick? On that second slide, on your memo, you mentioned that third party. Who would that be in, like?
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
The suspense is mounting.
You're difficult to follow. You
No,
don't
no.
I'm
Yeah,
on the
where
edge
are
of my
your
seat.
shoes?
I know. I don't
Okay.
have the.
Jordan shoes.
Sorry about that. So let's shift a little bit to the bonds themselves. And I'm going to talk about what they are and kind of how they're put together. So first of all, there can be 2 types of IRBs. They can be either taxable or non-taxable. When we talk about whether they're not taxable, we're not referring to whether it's sales tax or property tax. We're talking about income tax. So when we talk about whether a bond is taxable or not taxable, we're referring to bond interest and whether it's either subject to or not subject to federal income tax. So while this is great for the investor because the investor gets their earnings now tax-free if it's a tax-exempt bond, the Internal Revenue Service, as you can imagine, regulates that. They want to make sure that the tax-exempt bonds that are being issued are not going to impact revenue that's being collected by the federal government. So the project and its purpose are really what determines whether the bond is taxable or not taxable, and the city does not make that determination. It's determined by an external bond counsel who would determine if it could be tax exempt. So as I stated, the IRS regulates whether bonds can be issued tax exempt or not. So the IRS allocates a tax exempt volume cap to each state. So further, the governor also allocates the cap amongst various governmental units. So the current rules allocate $90 million to WCDA of tax exempt bonds that can be issued. Then there's also $30 million, which goes to the Wyoming Student Loan Corporation, and the remainder, which is approximately $180 million, to a general allocation pool. These are not funds that the state sets aside to buy bonds with. This is an allocation cap. So, let me see where I'm at my notes. The $180 million is the general allocation pool would be available to projects here in Casper that can qualify as tax exempt. They could be assigned that $180 million. So WCDA is currently the only local or state entity which is utilizing our tax exempt volume cap. So as you can see from the chart, the state of Wyoming receives an annual allocation of approximately $300 million. That's in that second column. WCDA can carry over their unused allocations. If they don't spend it all in 1 year, they can carry it over for 3 years. But other than that, there have not been any other allocations of this tax exempt volume cap since 2012. Converse County had a project for $10 million back in 2020. It was intending to issue $10 million of tax exempt bonds. However, the project did not move forward and the bonds were never issued. So when we think about, is everybody going to come tomorrow and ask us to issue IRBs for them? Probably not. So this is one of the most underutilized things that we can do. So this industrial revenue bonds have been on the books since 1965. Over the past 20 years, there's only been 3 taxable IRBs that have actually been issued. How do they work? So IRBs are considered conduit debt, meaning that while the city is the issuer, we have no responsibility for these bonds. The project cannot issue the bonds themselves. They must be issued by a governmental agency who is authorized to issue bonds. This sets up a potential partnership between the project and the city. The city is not giving taxpayer dollars to the project. Instead, investors are purchasing the bonds and providing that funding. The project is required to find its own investors, and in fact, the project can purchase its own bonds, and the state treasurer also purchases industrial revenue bonds. So when we think about who pays off the bonds, I cannot say this enough. The project is responsible for all payments on the bonds, not the government. There are no taxpayer funds involved in the transaction. State law provides that an IRB is not a general obligation of the city under the Constitution, and therefore there is no effect on the city's debt. All bonds are payable solely out of the revenues of the project for which the bonds were issued. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric, and he can talk about the approval process. What does that look like?
Thank you, Jill. Is it just return to forward or
It's the down arrow.
down arrow? Perfect. I'm gonna figure that out before I screw it up. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So now I'll walk through the approval process. Just a couple of items. So as has been mentioned, these have been around for decades, and industrial revenue bonds in Wyoming are codified in Wyoming Statute 15-1-701 et sec. And there are a few Supreme Court decisions around industrial revenue bonds, and in Holdings Little America versus Laramie County, the Supreme Court said you have to comply with some of these findings that are laid out in statute, but how the local governmental entity makes those findings or gets to its conclusion is really up to the local government entity. And so they basically left it open as to the process that the city would go through to reach the requisite legal findings. And so if council is wanting to move forward with developing a program, we would prepare a policy that council could consider adopting through a resolution that would outline the approval process. And so the way we would see this playing out would be that the company would meet with staff and that the staff would have that first interaction with the developer. Important to note that the company would be responsible for hiring the specific bond counsel, any underwriters, any trustees, any professionals needed for the issuance of the bonds. That this is a fairly specialized area of law and finance, and so certainly we would not be providing that, and it would be at their cost. We would propose that there be an IRB committee of staff members, community development, finance, and legal, much like you're seeing here tonight, that would receive the application, and it would include certain things like the project description, the number of jobs, career opportunities, impacts on land use and zoning. Financing, must have their financing secured. What would the economic impact to the community be in terms of wages and benefits and tax generation? Basic background information on the corporate structure and management, and just general community benefits. And a lot of that is specifically required to meet the statutory requirements. We would propose that the process then have the committees do a scored evaluation of the proposal. And what we would also be proposing is that we engage the services of the University of Wyoming to do a fiscal impact analysis, or an independent third party would pay for that analysis. The project would then be brought to council at work session, and we do believe that, although not specifically called out in statute, that a public hearing would be held to receive public input. If approved by the city council, attorneys would prepare the necessary closing documents. The mayor would execute closing documents, a resolution perhaps to move forward with the issuance. And at the closing, the purchaser would buy the bonds. And as had been previously explained, that could be a public purchase, private placement. There's lots of different permutations. We would also propose that there be fees, and that the typical fee would include a $2,500 application fee. And again, these would not be small projects. So we felt that amount would be reasonable given the scope of work that the city staff would be doing. There would be a fiscal impact analysis fee of roughly between $1,800 to $2,500, and that bond counsel fees plus their own counsel and transaction costs would be borne by the developer. So the total cost could range anywhere from $35,000 to $75,000, depending on the complexity of the financing and the process. And we estimate that it would take anywhere between 3 to 6 months. If approved by council, once the bond issuance takes place, there would be some accountability on a go-forward basis. The company would be required to submit an annual report to the city, basically speaking to those statutory requirements of employment, local purchases, community involvement, et cetera. So the approval process, currently in place in a lot of communities allows for lots of public input. Again, we would propose holding a public hearing. And I guess the main takeaway on this slide, and that's why it's all in bold, is that Casper City Council has the final authority whether to issue them or not. Even if staff says they check all the boxes, that we can make there's evidence to support the findings, it's really up to council at the end of the day to say, you know what, this project is not a good fit for our community, so we're not going to approve this, or conversely, it is a good fit, and so we're going to approve this. So the discretion lies solely with council, and you have the final say on whether any industrial revenue bonds are issued. And with that, that is my part of the presentation. I think that brings the entire presentation to a close, and we'd certainly be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Amber.
Two questions to start. The first one, I'm just a little bit confused about what is the advantage to an investor to purchase these versus just direct investment in the company. I can understand the investment or the advantage to the project, but it sounds like there's really no assurances or anything from the city. So what does an investor gain by taking this route?
I can generalize what the investor is looking for. They're looking for tax exempt bonds. So when you're an investor and you're investing in these types of bonds, the advantage is really I don't pay any income tax on my earnings from those bonds. So if I'm getting a 4% return on a $15 million bond, I'm getting that all tax free.
And if they aren't determined to be tax exempt, then is there an advantage or?
Not as much to the investor. Really, at that point in time, you're looking more at the project. So the project likes these types of bonds because typically it's cheaper than going out for commercial financing.
Okay, thanks. And then my second question is, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of pressure on the state cap at this point, but say in some sort of future world, does that just get automatically applied to the state cap? Is there some sort of approval process that we have to go through with the state to say like, yes, we're happy to have this under our cap umbrella, or does it just happen automatically?
Mayor, Council, so that's a little bit into the weeds. So my understanding of the process is you would have outside bond counsel that would have to render opinion, an IRS opinion as to the tax exemption or taxable nature of the bonds. I'm not exactly sure how mechanically that then is transmitted. I didn't see anything in statute that talks about an approval process or anything like that. That's really, frankly, where we would lean on outside counsel to guide us. Okay, thanks.
So a couple of thoughts on page 19 on the slides. You mentioned the fees. So I would agree on a 5 million project, the 2,500, but I would $50 million project not deserve more scrutiny in the process and have to pay more of a fee, because in my mind the city is going to have more invested with staff time to produce this, but and that's probably for another day discussion if we move forward. On the final page, the statement there is the final authority rests with the city council to get sued. Say you go through the process, and I'll use an example that the county has turned down on financing tool, which I believe was the industrial revenue bonds for the hospital, not for Banner, but for Commerce County. And so if we go through with the process, and council says, that it doesn't work for us if the vote is, say, 5-4 and we turn it down, what's to stop that board from suing us? Truly, if it's at that point, in my mind, on that particular project, that's a very politically charged instance, and I would vote against it because Banner could lose its designation as far as the trauma center and the emergency room, and its estimated loss from the federal government because of that designation between $10 and $14 million. So because of that, I would definitely vote against it. And then therefore, in my mind, setting us up to get sued.
Yeah, if you don't mind, let me, Mayor, Counselor, if I can address your first question, which is regarding the fees. So no matter the size of the project, everyone who comes forward will have to go through the application process. So that $2,500 was really to reimburse us for staff time for evaluating those applications. Beyond that, the city doesn't have a whole lot of other things that it's going to be doing. So beyond that, you're going to be looking to bond counsel, you're going to be looking to underwriters, you're going to be looking to trustees, all of which are paid for by the applicant. So I believe no matter the size of the project, the time invested by city staff should be the same. So that's why that $2,500 was kind of a flat amount.
Can I respond to that? Sure. Totally agree. Totally agree. However, if you're coming with a $5 million ask versus a $50 million ask, the mere size of the project and the paperwork at that level may be similar. Does the city not deserve a little more money based on a sliding scale, say $5,000? And I think for our citizens, we ought to be able to more than recoup the investment of staff time. Just my opinion.
Mayor, Counselor, we can set the fee to be whatever the council determines is appropriate, whether you want it on a sliding scale. Again, we weren't looking to make money on it. We were just looking to recover our costs.
I'm looking to make money.
Fair enough.
So Mayor, Council, then to the second question. So the somewhat glib answer is we can always get sued, right? And so the real question is would they have any case that they can prevail on? And I would say no. There's no vested right that any company or developer has to demand the issuance of industrial revenue bonds. And so for all the reasons that you laid out in your hypothetical, that would be your basis for denying it. So could we get sued? Yes, but my reading of the case law and the statutes is that the discretion always is vested in the elected officials to determine what is best for the community. And so really the intent of the policy is that the legislature has given us a statute that says at a minimum, you've got to make findings as to these 4 or 5 things. And so how do we, in an objective way, approach application or somebody that comes to the city that is going to request that issuance? So the intent would be to put that process together, but again, always being 100% cognizant that it's the decision is vested in the sound discretion of council to either approve or not. So I don't believe that there would be legal liability for denying an application. That doesn't mean we wouldn't get sued.
Yeah.
Appreciate the information. I'll admit though, I'm a little slow, struggling to keep up. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how this works. And so, was hoping you could give me like a case study of what you think this looks like. I was trying to do some side research over here and I'm still struggling to understand. So the investors, they purchase the bonds from us, the city, and then say it's a manufacturer, they want to build a manufacturing facility filled with CNC machines or something like that. Is the city's name on the title? Do we own those machines and they're simply leasing them from us over the course of those bonds purchase?
I'm sorry.
Yes, and so the statute provides two different mechanisms, and there is a mechanism where the city could actually take title to property in like a lease arrangement. But then in the last, in 710, it says, however, as an alternative method, no city or local government must take title to it. So again, the city is the issuer, but it's just a pass through essentially. And the real benefit is especially poignant if they're tax exempt. And so that allows the developer to get financing at a lower interest rate typically, and then the investor is getting a return that's not taxable, right? If it's determined that it's a taxable bond issuance, then to Ms. Johnson's point, it becomes less advantageous, certainly to the investor. The rate's probably going to be a little bit higher, but then it's a business decision on the part of the developer if that's the best way to finance it. So.
Thank you. Follow up if I could. So this sounds distinct from tax increment financing. I felt like I understood that pretty quick. And then I feel like this is similar but also different. So I understand TIF financing, tax increment financing, in the sense that we are foregoing, at least for a period of time, future increased property tax values. Walk me through how is this different? What is the formula? What is the city giving up in potential revenues for what period of time? And when can we expect the ROI kind of thing? Sorry.
Mayor, Counselor, great question, actually. So if we were to take title to the project, that would make it a government project and we would forego probably property tax. So when the counselor talked about not taking title to the project, that kind of relieves that. So we wouldn't be giving up anything at that point because the property would remain with the company and they would continue to pay property tax. So that is something that we looked at as far as what would the city give up by doing this. And if we decided that we did not want to take ownership of any of it, then the company would continue to pay the taxes that it would be required to pay.
And just to add to that, so we've had fairly lengthy discussions about what is the downside for the city. And I really struggle to see a big downside. Tax dollars aren't pledged to service the debt. If there's a default, there's no recourse against the city. It's just basically staff time. And then if we're recouping that through a fee, really the city is made whole, but the community is improved because now we've helped through this conduit financing spur this economic development that would ostensibly increase employment, increase the tax base, et cetera. So it's just been a very underutilized tool in the state of Wyoming, although in looking at other states, even here in the Mountain West or Southwest, I mean, it's much more utilized in province.
Follow up, I think we know. Thanks, Eric. I was trying to come up with reasons why, what pitfalls there could be for the city. You've satisfied my concern that there's any financial risk. We do, Jill, you had to reiterate multiple times in your presentation, no taxpayer dollars. You can say that as many times as you want, but there's going to be people out there that if the city is the bond issuer, they think we're bankrolling the whole thing. It's a city project. And so I do agree that the application process, does necessitate a degree of scrutiny, that we do need to be selective about our projects, like Pat was kind of reiterating in regards to the Summit Hospital one that the county turned down. We will have some reputational capital that we're giving up for these projects. So I do think we need to be careful about which ones, we're offering for this. Even if we have no financial risk, there's absolutely going to be people in the community that tie us to the project and think it's a city project. And so I think need to be mindful of that, but okay, thank you.
Thanks. My two questions again. The first is it typical, say the total project cost is $20 million. Is it typical that this type of financing is providing for a portion of that project, the whole project, just depends on the project?
The inquiries we've gotten would be for the whole project.
Okay.
And it could be towards infrastructure development, for instance, and ultimately the city could take over that infrastructure afterwards. So, I mean, this is where we were talking about ownership versus, whether we hold title to something. So yes, it would be for the whole project.
related to my second question. When the determination is being made between it being eligible to be tax exempt or not, is that predominantly if whatever results from the project is owned by the public or owned by the, retained by the private company? Is that
I mean,
the defining line typically, or?
You are absolutely correct, Mayor Counselor. The purpose of whatever the asset is that is being created is what will determine whether it's tax exempt or not. And again, that is not something that I would ever feel comfortable making that determination. Bond counsel would do that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Is there groups standing in line wanting to finance in this manner? Do we have developers that are currently wanting to use this tool?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, we do have one at this point that has expressed interest. But again, staff is also looking at this on maybe projects that we might bring forward also and be able to self-initiate with some opportunities. So right now, we do have one interested party that's come forward, and that has allowed us to start to explore this. And again, it was one of the 23 revenue strategies that the committee was working on and looking at special districts. And again, we've done some of that with the URA kind of concept. We're looking again, always at grants. We've even, there for a while, new markets tax credits where it was the ticket item. And we were able to see development here in Casper with topic or revenue strategies like that, which is how we got Fire Station 1 redeveloped back in 2004. So again, looking at, and tax credits again with the Wyoming National Bank building, which was more on a low income housing tax credits. But tax credits one way, that works. But bonds are again something that we would like to explore with your approval, and to see if we might be able to take that forward for the sake of Casper.
So a follow-up to that, are we working with Advanced Casper in conjunction with this or solely on our own?
Mr. Mayor, Counselor, we probably would bring Advanced Casper in. Again, the opportunity to do that fiscal impact analysis that we referenced as one of the steps, that is something we used to do when I was with CADA, was to do that on any company that was interested in Casper. When we think back to Boise Cascade, we did fiscal impact analysis. We think back with WL Plastics when they came in 2002, again, fiscal impact analysis. So that is an opportunity for a partnership with our economic development entity. Help us with that. XCount, you got it. Yeah, Polypipe was another one. A lot of that when that came through.
Mayor, just to dovetail on that, but to make it clear, in order to issue industrial revenue bonds, it's got to be a local municipality or county. And so we can certainly partner with Advanced Casper for aspects, but the city would have to be the issue.
Thank you. Yes, I was more on the process, but here, thank you.
Anything else for direction? So it sounds like the direction there is for us to explore and to give you guys the green light to.
Counselor, what we would like to do is to bring forward the policy via a resolution, which would outline the steps that were presented this evening to allow us to kind of get going with this. But again, via resolution with the policy.
Council comfortable with making that decision to move forward?
Fantastic. One last point. I think on the hospital deal, my recollection was that was going to be around 35 million. And they estimated, I can't remember the term, if it was 15 or 20 years, but it was going to save them for right around 10 million over the life of the project because it would be tax exempt. So in their financing, so to give you an idea of what that saves the developer. So,
All right, thank you guys, appreciate it. Thank you for presenting. All right. Rate models.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
It's the wonderful time when council gets to hear from our 3 enterprises on the proposed rate structure for the next 2 years. So tonight you will hear from each individually about their proposal for increasing rates for those enterprises to be financially stable and sustainable into the future. While you will hear some discussion tonight on proposed increases that range from 3% to 15% in some cases, I do want you to understand that we tried to factor the collective impact of all of the rate increases among the 3 enterprises and quantify that in a way that would help you understand what the impact to the average ratepayer would be in total to the increases. And so again, we might be talking about large percentage numbers or it sounds like large percentage numbers, but in the end, the average impact to the average utility customer for the proposed increase for next year would be $12.75 a month. For the following year, an additional $10.66 a month. And while we recognize that that will have impact on families and that any rate increase could be a struggle for some in our community, I want you to listen to the presentation, keeping in mind that we have deferred capital problems within our utilities and infrastructure systems. And in order to address those capital challenges, we need to bring our rates to a level where into the future we are able to replace that infrastructure for reliable utility service and sanitation service. And so with that, I'm going to turn the discussion over to Mr. Beamer, our interim public services director, and then he will have his enterprise managers present their proposals.
Thank you, Zelina. Mayor, council. I wish the high end was 15%, but we're looking at a rate increase of 34% in one fund. Good news is I won't be quoting state statutes, and there is no Latin quiz. So that's the good news. The bad news is we are talking about rates, as Zelina mentioned. We're talking about solid waste, both the refuse fund and the Belleville fund, as well as the sewer fund and the water fund. We are looking to adopt a rate resolution for to establish rates for the next 2 years, beginning in January of 2026, hard to believe we're 2026 already, with another adjustment in January of 2027. The rate increases for solid waste are relatively modest, from 0 to 3%, whereas water and sewer, we're looking to achieve a replacement strategy in accordance with industry standards. As you can imagine, there's a lot of work that went into these rate models. So I'm thanking Cindy and Krista and Ethan. I'd like to thank Jill and Pete for all their work putting these together. Cindy will talk about her pro forma for both Belleville and solid waste. Both Krista and Ethan will present a PowerPoint presentation outlining the scope of their systems, as well as some justification for the rate increase, as well as an opportunity for you to consider if you want to continue the subsidy of 1 cent into those funds. So we'll show you what those rate increases might change if you wish to fund something else, such as streets, with that 1 cent funding in the future. I'm sure Zelina could make an argument for Parks and Rec, and I'm sure the chiefs could make arguments for police and fire. But again, a 2-year resolution we're looking to bring to council next Tuesday night. And with that, I will turn it over to Cindy to talk about solid waste. And again, if there's any questions, feel free to ask them as you go, but ultimately at the end, we'll adopt the rates that you think are acceptable.
Mayor Pacheco, counselors. It is always a pleasure to talk trash with y'all. So, to begin, with refuse, which I want to thank Pete and my coworker Cheryl. They did all the work behind this, and they're awesome coworkers. In refuse, we're proposing a 3% increase in 26 and 27. And as I say in the memo that hopefully you received, that's 3% average in Natrona County in the state of Wyoming. Is kind of what's going on right now with inflation. So the majority of what we spend money on refuse is our trash trucks and our payroll. So it looks good. We're coming out of that slope where we're right on the reserves of where our minimum bank account should be, and we're coming out of it in 2027. So we thought that was a good recommendation for y'all to look at on that. And in the rate resolution, the draft one that we proposed you, which is attachment C, we also have some cleanup on a couple other rates in there that are current services. We currently provide locks for trash containers for commercial folks. We provide at the request if they want us to refurbish or clean their trash containers. And we also have an incentive for them to keep their trash corrals open with no cars blocking it in the early morning when we're there. So we wanted to establish that in the rate resolution, what we're currently doing. So with that, that's what we're proposing for refuse.
Yeah. Sorry, Kyle.
Thanks, Cindy. Can you remind me, I was trying to refresh my memory, the large expenditure for this fiscal year? What's that large expenditure right there between 25 and 26? The drawdown.
That was the purchase of the building.
No, correct you, Andrew, that was the Belleville Fund.
Oh, that's just.
Can you remind me?
Certainly. One aspect of the performance is always that we budget to spend all of the money in a given year. So in this particular case, we budgeted to spend all of our capital money that we had budgeted in 2025, even though we don't, because inevitably, in Cindy's case, a lot of that money is trucks. Trucks haven't arrived yet. And so we actually end up with a lot more fund balance at the end of FY25 than we actually need. Therefore, it now shows up as a huge expense now in 2026 because those trucks are now expected to arrive in 2026. And so that's where we spent it out now. And so you see that huge drop there in that first year because all that capital, which we had hoped to get last year, now we're hoping to get it this year. So that's what the expense is.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah.
So that I can better understand, so the regional concept that we accepted kind of pushed by the state. So Douglas comes up here, I believe, Rollins, and then outlying areas, we accept all of that. And does this new rate model take into effect those fees from those other communities being trucked in, or do our contractors, our ratepayers pay the same as Rollins does, as an example?
You're on, Counselor. Refuse is different than the Belleville Fund, which I'm going to get to that next, Counselor.
Took me a couple years.
So, this is absolutely just the city of Casper. Within the city of Casper limits, we
This
provide
is your
trash
cans that you're
collection.
dragging out to the curb.
Yeah, so these rates, which there are some corrections in the memo and the rate resolution that Pete pointed out to me, but our current monthly trash rate for our residential customers and Casper is $31.70 a month. We're asking it to go up to $32 $92.65, which is a 95-cent increase per month of 3%. And then the next year, a 98% or 98-cent increase the following year. So they are very modest. And next we'll talk about the Belleville, which is the regional rate model.
Sorry, is the 2030 target there? Is that trucks between 2030 and 2030?
Excuse me, and Counselor, it includes trucks and it includes in 2030 saving money to build a building to store all the trucks. We currently have one, but our fleet has outgrown that building. So that's showing our target to have enough money in our savings account to actually afford to buy another building in 2030.
Anything else on refuse?
Yes. Cell replacement. That's the next.
Yes.
Okay. Somebody else, you're gonna move on to B.
Okay. Pete, you wanna- Spell rate model that Pete and Cheryl put together. And the rate resolution, by the way, attachment A has a rate survey for trash collection, and you'll notice that was done by the state of Wyoming, that our rate increase is still below the average rate that the communities in Wyoming have. And on the Belleville side, as promised, when we purchase solid waste buildings and land, we are not recommending a rate increase for January, but we are in January 2027 to match inflation of the 3%. So that would take our $81 a ton up to $91 a ton, which is still less than the average landfill owner in Wyoming charges that's not supported by mill levies. And to answer the counselor's question about regional customers, we do have in the current rate resolution a 30% surcharge for out-of-county customers. And our current out-of-county customers under contract agreement with you all had a capital buy-in fee. And that was developed back in 2006 and 2009, between there's when we did those agreements. And the reason is because the one and only time the council has allocated the extra 1 cent to a solid waste project was to build that first line landfill cell, and it was $500,000. So we have recovered to date that $500,000 through capital buy-in, through outside community buy-in agreements, and haulers who aren't under agreements have been paying the 30%. So in that rate resolution draft, I'm saying we don't need that 30% anymore. It paid off how all of our customers should pay the same. We do offer rebates to outside county haulers because they don't participate in our hazardous waste program. They have their own hazardous waste programs. And they also, some communities, the town of Bags, bag their own waste, which we have a fee for bagging. So we have established in agreements rebates for out of county, so that won't change. I just wanted you to be aware of that we put it in the resolution, that we've done that in the past. So I am asking now for everybody to have the same fee, outside and inside county customers who come to the landfill.
So how do they contribute to building a new cell?
So right now, every single customer pays a standard, the $88 a ton. So we set our projections. I think it's 2036 now that we're projecting that we need our next cell. So if everybody's paying the same tipping fee, they're all paying into our savings account to get to that amount in 2036 to build that cell. So every single customer pays for the new cell, including the out of county. That, hopefully I explained that well.
That's your question, Pat.
It did, but it's not what I believe it should be. I'm thinking, and I know they have additional trucking expenses to get stuff up here from Rollins, but honestly, that's not the city of Casper's fault. But I guess I'm just thinking they should pay a bit more.
Your Honor and Counselor. So the reason behind not charging them more is regional landfills are advantageous to us and to other communities because it's like Sam's Club. When you build in quantity, it lowers the rates for everybody. And for us to be competitive, because they are paying anywhere from $25 a ton to $50 a ton to transport it, for us to be competitive, we need to share equally in that cost to get that lower rate. If we didn't have any of the out of county people, our rates would be higher, absolutely higher. And so they're getting a lower tipping fee by coming to us, and we're getting a lower tipping fee by allowing them to come to us. So it's a regional model to make it advantageous for everybody. And that was the general concept when the legislators put the landfill remediation program together and the regionalization program together, that was the idea, is that we all share in the costs and keep rates low for everybody.
Other questions about the Bayfield? Clarifications? Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. Sydney, to make sure I understood correctly, we were talking about ridding a surcharge that out-of-county haulers currently pay, right?
Right.
I assume you've done an analysis on that, like what kind of expected revenues do we look at, what's the trade-off there? Do we expect more people to be coming to the landfill from out of county because we've dropped the surcharge? And does that, will that be more than what we expect to lose in revenue from money we've typically gotten from the surcharge? Like, I assume we've done an analysis about that.
Your Honor, Counselor, absolutely. The reason I'm recommending taking that 30% surcharge is because we actually will, I believe, get more out of county haulers coming to us if we lower that to the same price that we're in paying. And the original intent in that 30% surcharge was to make up for our 1 cent money that we infused in that $500,000, and we've done that. So absolutely, I truly believe we're going to get more money because we're going to cost less. And we do compete with Gillette. And interestingly enough, Rollins could decide to go to Colorado. So I always am trying to make it as low as possible for those out-of-county people because they keep our rates low. We would truly have a much higher tipping fee if we didn't have the waste coming from out-of-county.
Thank you.
Bet.
How many more acres of land do we have in the sand dune up there?
Your Honor, Counselor, excellent question. I get asked that. We were very fortunate many years ago that Stuckenhoffs allowed us to purchase 1,700 acres of their property for future landfill sites. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's really an advantage that we have all this property because a lot of landfill owners pay millions of dollars for their property, and we got it from Stuckenhoffs for almost nothing. And at the same time, when trying to promote landfill diversion, because we have so much land, You know, it's, yeah, we can bury it. Where other communities on the east and west coast, they don't have land and they have to divert. And so it's a true incentive not having land to promote not putting stuff in the landfill. So it's a double-edged sword, but it's certainly I like because we have it very good that we have so many acres of future land available for landfilling. 1,700.
Trivia question, how many acres does it take to build a cell?
Your Honor, counselors, it depends on your design. In our particular design, we started out with 13 acres, and this last cell we did just 22 acres because it's going to last a much longer time, and it always costs more in the future for new landfill cells. So we just refined our numbers, and we're thinking in 2036, which seems like a long time. We'll need our next cell. So that particular one's 22 acres right now, that new one.
And how long is that one expected us to last? What's the timeline, the lifeline?
They get, Your Honor, counselors, as we proceeded through the first cells, they're the most expensive and last the least amount of time. So this one, it's 5 years, then 7 years, and now we're looking at almost 10. So it will be like a 12 to 15 year life when we get to that cell 6. So we certainly are thinking of the future generations, planning well with the capital money on landfill cells.
I was curious. So I took our 1,700 acres divided by 22, which was our most recent, times the 12 years we expect to get out of it. So in 1,000 years, Pat, we're going to have to be weighing.
So, Your Honor,
we can kick that
counselors,
can.
I have a really funny story about the 1,000 years because Tom Forsland used to tell me, don't tell people we have 1,000 years of life. Nobody can comprehend, Cindy, 1,000 years of life. So he'd say it's going to last a long time, maybe 100 or 200 years. So, but the math proves we're going to have it for a very, very long time. You're correct, counselor.
Thank you.
So see, Andrew said the same thing to me. 1,000 years, you can't
I
be
can't tell you what the technology is going to be though. You'll be pushing a button in your kitchen and
Vaporizing it.
Yeah. That would be awesome. So, but you're correct. The math today is over 1,000 years.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
Always a pleasure.
Come on up, Ethan. PowerPoint on here. All right. Mayor, Council, thank you for the opportunity to come up and present this information to you. As Mr. Greener mentioned, we did spend a lot of time putting this proposal together, this recommendation together for you. Tried to look at all the information that we had available to us to come up with a good viable plan. This is the water rate setting for the city of Casper for 2026, 2027. And I just want to lead into it with the city of Casper owns and operates over 381 miles of water main. So that's converted to feet, over 2 million lineal feet of water main. This is a graphic that kind of represents the age of our system in groups of 10 years. So as you can see, we have quite a bit of main that is between 40 and 50 years old and 50 years old. And a lot of that footage is non-PVC pipe. So non-PVC pipe being cast iron pipe, ductile iron pipe, asbestos cement, things with, well, obviously everything has fixed life. The metal pipes are the ones we tend to see the most breaks in. So we do utilize leak tracking, and it's really a key factor in determining the priority of our water main replacements.
utilize the leak history, the health and safety impacts, the impacts to our customers, and the overall impacts to the system, as it is a network of pipes connected together that provide this water to our citizens. As you can see, the water main in the map there is blue for PVC, and the orange represents non-PVC pipe. If I pull up our leak data, you can see that a lot of the leak data or the leaks coincide with the metal pipe in the ground. We have seen increases in the number of breaks that we're experiencing annually. This is our water main break counts annually over the last 15 years. And you can see in 24 and in 2025, we did see a significant number more breaks than we saw 10 or 15 years ago. And just to kind of share what a water main break tends to look like, here's a short video of a water main break. This is the fifth leak on this 1976 section of ductile iron pipe. There's no noise. The noise is impressive. It's loud. You can imagine. But not every break looks like this, obviously, but a lot of breaks are larger breaks that end up potentially causing damage to private property. This is a cast iron pipe from 1963. This is a cast iron pipe from 1960. You can see there's a pretty big difference in the condition of those pipes. Similarly, ductile iron, this is a 1975 ductile iron pipe. You can see the writing is still intact. Looks like it's a brand new pipe. This is also a 1975 ductile iron pipe. It's primarily why we utilize leak data to prioritize where we replace mains, because that's how we get the best understanding of what's failing. Our proposed fiscal year 26 priority water main replacement project comprises 3 street sections that we're replacing main. You can see the years or the age of those pipe sections in red there, 55 years, 70 years, 54 years. I think between these 3 sites, we've had over 12 main breaks. And it replaces about 4,800 feet of water. The average useful life of water main is 100 years. Industry guidance from the EPA, so regulator, and the AWWA, American Water Works Association, industry experts. They recommend a minimum of 1% of a water system be replaced annually. They actually recommend 1 to 2% of the system, but our recommendation is based on 1%. So 1% replacement equates to a 100-year replacement cycle. And then if we replace 1% of the system every year, in 100 years, we will replace the entire system. As going back to our first slide, we have 2 million feet of water main. So 1% of our system is approximately 20,000 feet of water main. This is information on the number of feet of water main we've replaced year over year over the last 10 years. And as you can see, we've not ever hit the 100-year replacement line, which is 20,000 feet of main. This is the average price per foot of water main of those projects that we evaluated. So you can see that there was a pretty big increase in the cost of installation of water main since COVID. Currently, we're estimating that the average price or the current price per foot is about $300.50. So to look again at a 100-year replacement cycle at $350 per lineal foot, 20,000 feet of water main can be replaced for $7 million per year. So far, that's only considering water main in the ground. We also have 23 water tanks, 16 booster stations. We have fleet and equipment that we utilize to repair water mains when it does break. We also have structure maintenance and repair for those booster stations in our distribution garage. In total, the recommendation that we're forward to the council is an $8 million annual capital budget to achieve a 100-year replacement cycle or 1% system replacement. So to look at some comparisons to other municipalities in Wyoming of where our current water rates lie, you can see that our existing water rates for 8,000 gallons of water usage, which is slightly higher than the average wintertime usage for our customers. $43.38. That's a monthly. Our proposed rate increases, as Mr. Beamer said, we put together a couple scenarios for you, one with 1 cent funding and one without 1 cent funding. This is the proposal without 1 cent funding. And in that proposal, we do see that we need to increase rates about 8% for the next 3 years, followed by 6.5% rate increases for 4 or 5 years to kind of ease into matching our capital expenses with our revenues, or our total expenses with our revenues. This graphic is from the Waterworth software that we recently invested in to help us evaluate our expenses and revenues and come up with rate recommendations for the council. So it's different than the one that you'll see for Krista and the one that you saw for Cindy. So how that looks in comparison, after an 8% rate increase, we're looking at about $46.85 for that same 8,000 gallons of water. Still pretty low compared to other entities within our state. This is the option with 1 cent funding. So if we continue to maintain 1 cent funding at its current rate, supplementing the water fund, we can make our revenues and expenses match with a 5.5% rate increase for about 5 years. And after that, it kind of weans towards inflationary increases. This is how that comparison comes up compared to other entities, $45.78 per month at the average 8,000 gallons per month. And the next graphic is all three of those combined. So you can see the existing rate, the 100-year with 1 cent funding, and the 100-year without 1 cent funding.
Ethan, can you please remind us the 1 cent funding? Is it $2 million a year?
It's 2.175.
2.175. 2.175.
Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
While we're on that subject, do you have anyone with any historical knowledge about the rationale for supplementing this enterprise and other with 1 cent funds whenever that decision was made? Yes.
Counselor, I might be able to help. It's always very popular when you put out your 1 cent surveys with the citizens. They like low and they like to have their water and sewer bills low. And who doesn't? But it's not reflective of the true cost of providing that service. But it is a very popular with the citizenry. So when you put out your surveys, it always comes back police, fire, water, sewer, and then it drops down Parks and Rec and community outreach and all that kind of stuff. So it's always been very popular when you put out your 1 cent survey.
Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Do you have a sense? I guess my sense when I've only been around for 2 cycle of this. So like the survey, I don't know that it indicates clearly to folks that it's lowering their bills. I think yes, water is important to folks, so they're going to mark water as being a high priority. I've never gotten the sense that the question is, do you want lower water rates with this money, or do you just want water to work for you? Right. So do you have a sense of the specificity of that question as it's been asked over the multiple cycles that it's been asked?
Mayor, Councilor, very good question. I've never been privy to that survey, and the wordage can impact how people vote, I think, for certain things. I don't know how that has been worded in the past. I don't think it specifically stated, do you want to keep your water and sewer bills low by X amount of dollars by supporting 1 cent going to that fund? I don't think it's been ever that explicit.
See if I can find it.
Go ahead, Pat.
Currently, this is 1 year of the 8% versus 8%, 8%, 8%.
Mayor, Councilor, very good question. We take a look at our capital needs out for 10 years. We look at our, and this is assuming that we're going to get to replace 1% of our system going forward. You can say, no, you need to change it to 200 years. We think you can live with 300 years. I won't be around to know if that's sustainable or not. Right now, what we have funded is not sustainable. I can tell you that. We have to increase funding and replacement strategy in order to provide a reliable system. But we look at ongoing capital expenses, primarily water main replacements, booster stations, water tanks, fleet, all that kind of stuff. And that's all built in the model and projected out. The crystal ball gets very cloudy the further out you go in the future, which is why we will probably come back, not me, but Ethan and Cindy and Krista, and to see how is our crystal ball performing based on our expectations. Just to give you an update, we are looking to establish rates for the next 2 calendar years, but we'll give you an update a year from now to show you this is how it's actually performing. But it gets cloudy the further out you go, which is why we're going to set them for 2 years, and then we'll come back and go, yeah, our projections are pretty good. I think what we had projected is still applicable, or we have to make other adjustments. I think the next slide is questions, but it is.
Hi.
Timing.
So Mayor, I did, too late, but I did reach out to Paul Bertolio, who I consider kind of an expert from his years on city council and with regional water before it was regional. And I didn't get a call back, and I didn't only because I don't think he had kept up with all of this over the years like Paul had. But I would be curious if you ran any of this past, like Paul Bertolio or.
Well, I did spend a lot of time developing this information and talking about the number of city staff, but I did not necessarily reach out to Paul.
But Mayor, Councilor, to your point, this model does take into account the wholesale rates that the city pays from regional water. So that isn't included in this rate model, just to make that clear.
Yeah.
Other questions?
And I don't know if this is necessarily specifically for Ethan, but I mean, to me, an 8% increase, to me, I think it makes it incumbent on us to really take a hard look at that 1 cent money. But I guess my question is, and again, it's not specifically for Ethan, but can we make that decision in a timely enough manner to offset this rate increase if it's supposed to go into effect in January of 26? An 8%, I mean, is that going to happen? We can't make that decision about offset tax, right? Until we could. It's another year from now, right?
Here, Counselor. So we are currently in 1 cent number 17.
Right.
And we have committed 1 cent, $17 to water and sewer through the 4-year duration.
Okay.
So that cutoff would not occur until 1 cent 18.
Thank you.
If that was the choice of the council.
Yeah, thank you.
Have we given any consideration in the model to a phased approach? My personal belief is that the enterprise funds should be enterprise funds and should be a self-contained fund that supports itself eventually. But I think we've worked to not see dramatic fluctuations in our rates and to really try to achieve gradual rate changes. And so have we given any thought to some sort of period of time by which we reduce the dependence of the fund on 1 cent over time?
Mayor, Counselor, the two scenarios that I worked up are essentially we continue on scent or we don't continue on scent. So I did not put together a scenario where we wean ourselves off of one scent.
But it could be done theoretically.
I imagine.
And it would land somewhere in between those two. I don't know about that. Okay.
So according to the memo, this is a 2-year suggestion for council. Why set the rates 2 years in a row? Should we do just a year or I guess just a question.
Mayor, Counselor. Historically, we've established rates for 2-year increments. And certainly will of the council to determine if 1 year is more comfortable or appropriate. And in the case of water, I may suggest that you do consider that, given that there is a study underway right now to implement tiered rates. And that could be something that you consider at a time, probably this time next year. But that is completely up to the council. If you want to establish the 2-year rate, we would be prepared for public education to implement in the next rate setting period, which would be 7 for January 28 implementation. If we went the full 2 years, and you could implement tiered rates at that time. But it's always at the council's discretion. It's your resolution to pass, whether you want to do it for a 1 year or 2 years.
So what does the tiering effect really mean, I guess? Commercial, is that commercial rates, larger water users?
The tiered rates is a system of rates that is not a flat rate per 1,000 gallons. It's dependent on how much gallons are used by each user. So the rates for using a lower amount of water are less than the 1,000 gallon rates for using a large amount of water. To help relieve some of the burden to our lower using customers, as well as discourage excessive or wasteful use of water. Irrigation purposes or whatever. Excessive amounts of water for.
I think generally setting 2 years at a time is a good thing because it helps people plan and prepare for what it looks like in the future. But I do think perhaps in this specific case, I wouldn't say across all the enterprises tonight, but perhaps in this specific case, I would support just doing 1 year. Yeah, because of the variety of unknowns that we're contending with.
So I'm not worried about, actually, when I finally read the packet, Saturday night, I think it was, I was like, what the hell is this? And it's to go into effect in January. I was like, that's a pretty good leap at 8%. Totally understand the logic and methodology and preparing all of that, but and I'm not concerned about the political ramifications. I guess that's not part of my concern, but so and I hate to think the people I've basically talked to about water and trash bills that Jill has helped with. Most of those folks are on a very fixed income, and this will be, what did you figure on your bill and overall increase?
Well, if I calculate correctly, this is going to end up being my overall utility bill is going to be up like 20% from a year ago. year ago at this time till January 26th with combined rate increases. 20% in 2 years or in a year feels a little more than a year feels burdensome. I know we still have sewer to talk about. And I fully appreciate that we're under the state average. And there's, I can talk about that later, but the deferred maintenance and so forth. Seems to be.
And we can't compare us to Rollins because they have neglected that system. They have wood pipes and coming off of their collection from way outside of town. And so we've thankfully done a much better job. So.
Any other questions before we move on to sewer? Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor, I didn't mean any offense by Paul Bertolio, but his knowledge of these systems and his length of time on council, I think that's why I reached out to his for his opinion on this, but I didn't hear back thanks to him.
Thanks, Pat.
Mayor, councilors, it's good to speak to you again about wastewater, but more specifically this time sewer. I know that in the past we have focused our discussions on regional wastewater, which includes the wastewater treatment plant and regional sewer systems. And those needs are high, but one of the things that we're waiting for are the results of the master plan at the wastewater plant to see the direction that we really need to go in spending out there. So with that fund, we're keeping things pretty stable right now. So today we're just going to talk about the city sewer system, which those revenues do feed to pay for the regional wastewater plant. So these increases here could potentially need to be increased more down the road as wastewater treatment needs are better identified. So you're going to see a lot of commonalities between Ethan's and my slides. Our sewer system within the city of Casper is just over 300 miles. This is about 1.6 million feet, and there's about 7,000 manholes spattered throughout town. And like water, the average useful life for sewer is about 100 years. American Water Works Association and the EPA both say that we should be replacing 1% to 2% of our systems a year. Like Ethan, that 1% replacement equals a 100-year replacement cycle. And for us, that's 16,000 feet of pipe a year, as well as 67 manholes. So for some history, over the last 10 years, we have replaced about 5,600 feet of sewer main and 77 manholes. Now, this is not the regional system. We have replaced some on the regional system, but that is separate from this conversation. And similarly, costs are increasing within the infrastructure replacement for sewer infrastructure. Going to the next slide, we're at about 300 feet, $300 per linear foot of replacement and $10,500 per manhole. So with 16,000 feet, that 100-year cycle, 16,000 feet and 67 manholes being replaced every year is $5.5 million. This does not include lift stations. We have 11 city lift stations throughout town. We've got a fleet. We have Vector trucks that are used to clean these lines that are very expensive, as well as other inspection and maintenance equipment that require capital investments routinely. So with that included, a 1% system replacement and capital needs budget would be $6.3 million a year. So the things that we look at when we're looking at what we need to replace on the city sewer system are risk-based, consequence of failure, and likelihood of failure. We have a crew out there in a CCTV van that inspect these from the inside to determine what our infrastructure repair needs are. So we have this old clay pipe. This is pipe going back to the 50s and 70s, and it is failing, as you can see. When roots start to grow in here, they start to break the pipe apart even further, and so it just further exacerbates the issues that are there in those pipes. Show you some more pipes from the 1940s. These are all clay pipes, and they tend to have failure. The pipe wall thickness on these pipes in these small residential areas are pretty thin, less than an inch, and so they're more subject to failure than these larger diameter pipes. Additionally, we have these manholes. We talk about pipe a lot, but manholes also are prone to failure. The manhole on the left it's concrete, but it's corroded enough that you can take a screwdriver and push it through the sidewall of that manhole. It's that corroded. The manhole on the right is actually just out the window over here, and it has no bottom, so that wastewater that's flowing through there is exposed to the soil beneath. And these are things that we have not had funding to be able to address over the last 10 years. Going to our city sewer system, the two primary material types are vitrified clay pipe, VCP, and PVC. PVC started being installed in 1978. And so our system is about 50% VCP and 50% PVC. The VCP is in moderate to poor condition. The PVC is doing pretty well, but we have also had failures on PVC. So going to how to prioritize projects, we do risk of failure, consequence of failure, and one of the things that we also look at are the backups. So when a sewer main clogs because of roots, because of grease, because of collapse, we identify that. It most often happens on VCP pipes, and we keep track of those. Over the last 10 years, we've had over 140 mainline backups. And we use this as one of the pieces in determining which pipes should be replaced first. When we do have these mainline backups, the way that we're most often notified is because wastewater is entering somebody's basement and not making a very good day for them. And there's lots of cleanup and repair on our side that is required as well. So going to the costs, Casper is in the bottom quarter of our sewer rates. I'd like to highlight on the right-hand side, there are a few communities with asterisks behind their name, and that is because those communities have lagoon wastewater treatment plants. Lagoon wastewater treatment plants are way less expensive to maintain and operate than an activated sludge plant like we have here in Casper. So it's hard, while we're comparing them here, it's a little bit of apples and oranges because their costs are that much lower than ours in their treatment. So right now we are at $24.50 a month for your average sewer customer. Now we've talked about the 100-year replacement, and that is the goal, to meet industry standards. But that increase would have resulted in a 55% increase in 2026 and a 42% increase in 2027. And this is not accounting for 1 cent. Sewer historically has received $425,000 a year in 1 cent. And so while it affects us to lose 1 cent, it's not as impactful as water's losing the 1 cent. So going to phasing this in a little bit more slowly. starting at a 200-year replacement cycle for 2 years, followed by a 150-year replacement cycle for 2 more years, and then a 100-year cycle. Our rate increases for 2026 would be 34%, followed by 18% for 2027. This is $8.33 increase for 2026 and $5.91 for 2027. And I did include keeping that 1 cent continuing at the current funding level, and that reduces the rate increases by 1% for those first 2 years to 33% and 17%. And I know this is a lot, but when you look at it comparatively to the other communities in our state, especially those with activated sludge treatment plants, we are still in the bottom half of rates for those customers at $32.84 per month.
That's with the 34%.
That is with the 34%. Mayor, Councilor, you had alluded to, wanting to know, the second year, how that impacts and how that compares with the other communities. A lot of the communities don't know what their rate increases are going to be for the subsequent years. So we felt like we could only accurately show the comparable rates for the next year because their rates are apt to go up as well.
Anybody else?
So going to the overall rate impact, including water, sewer, and refuse. Currently, the average homeowner pays $99.58 a month. In 2026, that would increase to $112.33, and in 2027, it goes to $122.99.
So again, if you could back 1 slide.
Yeah.
So in 26, that's 34%. In 27, that's 18.
Correct.
So what's 34 and 18 added together? 52. So was there any thought of doing 25 and 25?
What we wanted to base our recommendation on were industry standards and not just percentages necessarily, though it would push off projects in the next 2 years if we were to phase it in that method.
So I don't understand that because if you're going to 34 and then backing off to 18%, it would seem to me you're shorting that second year.
So Pete might be able to help me, but if I'm recalling correctly and going through some of the modeling, when we adjusted it a little bit like you're describing, it made us dip below our reserve requirements later on by trying to buffer it initially.
Mayor, Council, we would simply have to adjust our capital out in the future. We would not be able to spend what we anticipate being able to spend with these proposed rate increases. We would have to simply adjust our capital expenses going into the future. We can adopt whatever rate increase you're comfortable with, but by doing so, we will simply reduce capital projects in order to balance the rate model. Go ahead, Pat.
Estimated 3 years out, I can't remember.
At 3 years out, 15%, followed by 12%.
In inflation added to that, you would come back ask for an inflation riser.
Mayor, Counselor, one of the benefits of this software is that it accounts for inflation. And so as long as we don't have another COVID type situation where our inflation numbers are higher than average, I feel like this is a comfortable approach. Then again, you know, wastewater treatment and their capital needs will affect the road additionally. So this 18, 15, and 12% may need to be increased to address wastewater capital needs.
So in thinking about the 1 cent, being it's only less than 500,000, in thinking about all the users to this centralized system, which Casper bears the majority share of the sewage, and users, but on the 1 cent, would it have not been fair? I don't even know how you do that. You know, on the 1 cent, shouldn't some of the other participating municipalities have paid into that 1 cent for the system? I don't even know how you could typically do that.
Mayor, Councilor, that's a really good question. The way that it's been accomplished in the past is to have those 1 cent funds go to Casper sewer projects only. So they don't go to the regional interceptor sewer, they don't go to the wastewater treatment plant. So that we're keeping those 1 cent funds in Casper projects only.
And thanks, Krista, for all this information. I mean, I definitely like the direction we're going. I think I've been harping on this 300-year replacement schedule for sewer since my first year on council. It's never really made sense to me. So it's definitely the direction that I think we need to be going. God, the timing's just, not that there's ever a good time to increase your sewer bill 33%, but I've also been speaking repeatedly at our meetings about the things I hear from folks in the community, like Kim at the Housing Authority, about all the applications she has to go through to fill voucher-based housing, and the fact that the utility debts is pretty much the driving factor behind people not being able to secure housing with that agency. Rocky Mountain Power, recently ruling in their favor to adjust their rates even higher. There's nothing to say it'll be better to do this 2-3 years. Maybe economically we're even worse off, and so we'd be kicking ourselves for not doing it now. But I'm really, really torn on this because I'm really worried about overburdening people on one hand. On the other hand, I think it's irresponsible to defer maintenance and make a future council pick up the tab. So I get it. I really appreciate this presentation. I appreciate the information, the recommendations. It's a very tough pill to swallow. No questions, just me needing to bed. If you'd like to.
No, if there's no
please.
question, I'm going to stay seated.
Michael.
Thanks, Mayor. So Krista, thanks. I mean, I know you and I know Ethan and Cindy did an incredible amount of work on all this. So thank you very much for all that. First of all, on the rate increase for sewer, so you've got kind of forecasted out about 10 years on that second page in the memo there, from starting with the 34% increase this coming January, over a 10-year period, dropping down to 4% at the end of that 10-year period. Is there, I'm sure I know there's a good answer for this, and I think I know what it is, but I'm going to ask it anyway. But on the 34%, so that, let's say that averages out to about 10%. It's an average 10% rate increase over that 10-year period, 10% per year. What is the rationale for not spreading it out, other than, as Kyle mentioned, the deferred maintenance aspect of that? But what's the rationale for not stretching that out?
Mayor, Councilor, we have been deferring maintenance for a long time. And so trying to get our first step in at higher capital investment is the rationale behind that.
This only affects the collection system and not the plant itself.
Yes, Mayor, Councilor, I'm gonna get into the weeds a little bit on this graph. So there's multiple colors. The vertical lines are revenue lines. The bottom light blue band is the operational cost for sewer. The dark blue band is the expense that sewer pays for wastewater treatment. And then the green on the top is the increasing capital in sewer. So you'll see that, wastewater treatment has some ebbs and flows, but it's pretty consistent right now. And when we know that we have what project needs and what costs are associated with those projects after this master plan at the wastewater plant, that middle blue band is likely to increase. And so this doesn't account for a lot of stuff at the wastewater plant, but we will know more about that in the coming year as that master plan is firmed up.
So I guess where, in my mind, I'm trying to go there is, let's say, Mills, Evansville are none. And then I believe Vista West and that way all comes down to the treatment facility. So where does that leave, let's say, bar none? Right.
So, Mayor, Councilor, Casper's portion of the costs associated with the wastewater treatment plant are approximately 85%. So each of those entities that contribute wastewater to the regional system pay their pro rata share of those expenses as well. So when we meet with those groups quarterly right now, we've been talking about the capital needs of the plant and talking about what sort of increases they'll need down the road. Right now, we don't have huge increases on wastewater. So right now, I don't anticipate them having to increase their rates substantially, but we'll also have the discussion of Casper is raising its rates and we anticipate some higher costs associated with that master plan project. And they may want to do some anticipatory rate increases.
Chris, it's not a question for you. It's actually for Zulema. So
Okay.
should I hang on to it until, yeah, I'll hang on to it until, yeah.
So I'm a little lost on my example with, let's say, bar none.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still sending, to the plant. And in the memo, one of the memos was mentioned the screw pumps.
Mm-hmm.
And to help with those costs. So why wouldn't Mills, Evansville, bar none, in their percentages, we're 85. But why would our users pick up the differential? They would also have in their percentage a 34% increase.
Mayor, Councilor, the expenses at the wastewater plant are split evenly. And so while this 34% accounts for costs associated with wastewater treatment, it also accounts for increases associated with improved capital in Casper's sewer system. So they're not paying for the 34, they're likely not going to do that 34% because maybe their systems don't need the same investment than our system does.
Probably don't have 1940s pipes.
Maybe not. But their investment in the wastewater plant will always, per an agreement, be equivalent to their percent of contribution. They have their own sewer systems that they have to maintain. So when they look at their rate models, they have to account for what their needs are in capital investments in their city sewer system.
We have an estimate what bar none might have to on the plant itself.
I do not have estimates, but given the graph of what we're seeing, it's
8%.
maybe, yeah, not terribly substantial.
Here's their cost.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
We noticed our infrastructure's 18 because we took over that. So boardwalk goes straight down. Trying to plan ahead for it.
Any questions for Kristen? Wrap us up, Andrew.
We are looking for direction, believe it or not, as to what kind of rate increases you'd like to see for solid waste, water, and sewer, because we are looking to bring a rate resolution to next Tuesday's council meeting. And Zalima's absolutely right. There's nothing magical about 2 years. Historically, it's been set for 2 years because this is a big undertaking for staff. It's a big undertaking for council, quite honestly, to look at these every year. We give an update typically every other year, but rates have historically been set for 2 years at a time. But that is not set in stone, and it can be absolutely adjusted if you wish to do so. But I don't know if you'd like to give a thumbs up for solid waste, if you're comfortable with a 3% refuse collection and a 0% and a 3% for Belleville for 2026 and 2027. Are you comfortable with that?
I think that's the least I was gonna say, here's what I was gonna say.
Starting with the easier one.
I was gonna say I could just come and give you a hug
Yeah.
for starting that, for doing that, Andrew. Because I know the other stuff's gonna be a lot more deep, but is everybody okay with that recommendation from the city staff and Andrew?
Okay, so you will see that rate resolution, solid waste, reflective of that discussion. Water, there's a couple of things we need direction on. Right now, the recommendation is 8%. And you can see what that does to the water rate. It goes from $43.38 a month up to $46.85 a month. That's with the 8%. And that anticipates that you're no longer subsidizing it with 1 cent, and that money becomes available for other opportunities. If you don't want to fund it, if you wish to continue the 1 cent funding, hopefully this is our ploy to get you to make decisions quickly.
So I guess.
So you've got 5 seconds.
So I guess the conversation around this is that with the water rate, looking at the increase of 8%, I think the big question is, I was just asking Zulima, making the decision whether we want to cut back on, the 1 cent funding for this to subsidize, for that. Do we want to go for the full, cut of that, where we go to the 46.85? Do we want to, I guess I kind of want to open that up and see where we're kind of all sitting when it comes to water. So I'm going to start with Kyle and then I'll get you, Amber.
Well, like Amber, I do believe the enterprise funds need to be self-sustaining. And I think it's unfortunate we're in the position now where we're having to pull them out. My question is, has city staff given any thoughts to where we would reallocate the 2.6-ish million currently being used for water and sewer infusions. Do we have any thoughts where we would be reallocating that?
Mayor, counselor. Not actual recommendations at this time. Clearly, there's been thoughts amongst all of the departments, how we would utilize capital dollars if they were reallocated from utilities to other priorities. But, you know, primarily you are looking at priorities in public safety, streets, and parks. But then you're also looking at transit operations. I mean, we all rely on 1 cent funding for our infrastructure. And so while each department director is going to have suggestions on where those dollars go, you know, we all have needs, and it would be up to council to redirect those funds where they feel like the need is greatest. Keep in mind that you have a business center to fund, a fire station to fund. So, I mean, there are needs out there that we have to start thinking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think there's a world where we sort of detach to two things, that there is a world where we increase the rate and still decide to subsidize to help move this, get us closer to where we need to be sooner. So I would advocate that the rate needs to go up 8% regardless of what we do with 1 cent in this fund. And I would advocate that we do it for 1 year. To give us time for the master plan to come. We do it for 1 year on this.
Does everybody feel comfortable with, because I was gonna make that same proposal that, you know, that 8%, do the 8% and then do it for 1 year. How does council feel about that? And I think we'll tackle the 1 cent here in a second, because I think that's gonna be a little bit more of a
What
conversation.
was the schedule again? If someone doesn't mind bringing it back up.
Not to switch to the other
Oh, I'm sorry.
PowerPoint. That's all right.
I didn't write it down.
6, 6, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4.
With the 1 cent.
6.5.
8 for 3 years, 6.5% for 5 years, and then inflation.
What was that?
8% for 3 years, 6.5% for 4 years, and then inflationary rates following that.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Can I ask, so I better understand the proposal, what is the rationale for doing it just 1 year? Is it to give us time to gauge 1 cent renewal? What's?
Master plan, the tiered water rate study is
Okay.
coming to us. So be redoing them potentially.
Okay.
This is a tough conversation.
Well, we're gonna be screwed either way. And it's true. We're gonna be screwed either way. I guess, and I certainly don't disagree, but I think if we're gonna do it, we might just well do the 8% for 2 years.
I feel like the difference here, as a water user, I had a water bill sent to me. I'm a water user. I average, $100 a month for just my water. We're looking at 6.5%. That is a difference between $6.50 and $8. That's $1.50. We're right this second deciding. And I use a lot of water. I watered 2 weeks ago, guys.
So you're saying 8% is okay with you?
I feel like if I'm using a lot of water and we're hashing $1.50 a month, most income restricted people do not water their lawns in November like I did. So I think that maybe this is not where we focus. Also, I'm gonna love the tiered, but I deserve it. I acknowledge it.
And I water my lawn a lot during the summer, and so the tiered, I'm gonna get totally screwed.
We will cry together next year.
I let it die the first month, and then you don't have to worry about it.
It's so much easier that way.
It's
isn't it?
really easy to do.
You can come sit on my football grass.
I'm gonna unplug this power strip here so we can.
Speed us along.
Well, so I think there's a proposal to be okay with the 8%. The question is going to be, because when I asked Zulima, I think we do have to make some type of a decision about the 1 cent funding. This is going to be the biggest thing for me, is trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. And Amber, I think rightly so put it, do we do that 8% and then do we continue to keep that subsidized, right? Or keep it on there to get us closer or whatever. So what's the question that we need to look at and about that 1 cent funding?
So, Mayor, Tom put this out early on, that I recall, about eliminating that subsidy when it comes time. And so I didn't like that at first, because I think that has been popular with our citizens. But time has come where without, like Laramie County utilizes the 6 cent truly for infrastructure and special projects, where we have to utilize the 5th cent for all of that. And so the enterprise counts, I guess I believe now, in looking at it, and who knows what the voters are gonna do with us anyway on the 5th cent coming up. I hope they see the value in the 5th cent. We sure do. But I think we should decide not to utilize that to subsidize the water infrastructure and improvements like it has been.
Mayor, Counselors, so to Counselor Pollock's point, you could choose to keep or to set the rate increase at 8% and then decide later if 1 cent would be applied to approve the capital agenda for another 4 years to get to that 100-year replacement a little bit faster, and subsequently may reduce increases into the future. So really, while I initially said you need to make a decision on the 1 cent contribution now,
We could make that 8%.
because it's helping to establish the rate, you could decide on the rate tonight and then choose later to continue contributing to water and sewer through 1 cent. But just understand that this rate, as recommended, is intended to show a reduction in that 1 cent.
Good clarification. So we don't necessarily have to make a decision on that. We put making the plan to give you guys direction on the rate increases. Okay. Amber.
And Mayor, if you go with 8% and then decide in November to continue to fund it, I'm hearing you want a resolution for 1 year. We could then take a look, and that 8% next year would go down, obviously, if you continue the 1 cent funding source for.
So Mayor, can we take a vote on 1 year, 2 year?
So I've got 2 that have comments or questions. So let me get those and then we'll make a thumbs up. Go ahead, Amber. Okay, think about it, let me know. Kyle.
You're not old enough for that yet.
I mean, I totally get, we don't have to make a decision on 1 cent until we draft the resolution in preparation of the election next year, but my feelings now are very, the enterprise funds should be self-sustaining, so, it is what it is, and I do think it's important that we pull that subsidy out, but unless there's some sort of alternative plan to increase streets funding, I believe strongly at this point that most, if not all of that, probably needs to go there, because my guess is the streets picture is just as bleak as this. Decades of deferred maintenance, no real plan to get that funding where it needs to, and so really that's the only way it sits right with me. If pulling it out of water and sewer helps us to achieve the benchmark we need to be at for streets, that makes it a little more palatable to me. It would be a shame, I think, if that 1 cent got, just sort of lost in the ether amongst the other things, and streets is still left on the table drastically underfunded. So I guess so everyone else is aware. That's where I sit with that.
Well, Amber remembered.
So I think one way or the other, I'm in support of removing 1 cent as a subsidy. I could advocate for using it as a supplement to something that is already putting us on a track that is self-sustainable, if in the context of we still feel like that is the most critical need after all the needs are on the table. I prefer to look at them all at once rather than trying to parse out without, we have the benefit tonight of a pretty in-depth analysis of the condition of those two systems, right? But we're not looking at that same information for everything else right now. So for me, I think, yes, I could support it going to streets. I also could support it. I mean, it could be that there's a better case that this is more urgent. I don't know. But until we look at it all together, I'm not sure. But either way, I think removing it as a mechanism to artificially reduce rates needs to happen. But I do think there's still a world where potentially this is urgent enough that it still needs a supplement from 1 cent in the next cycle.
I agree, but I wanted to throw a little wrench in for you, Kyle. My thought was, well, maybe we start using that to start that stormwater fund we need. Keeps it on water.
So Pat moved to, did you want to say something? Oh, okay. Is everybody okay with the 8%? And we said the 1 year?
Yeah.
For 1 year? Everybody okay with that? Are you a no, Pat? Or you just,
I'm a no.
you're a no? Okay.
I want vote on 2 years.
Is anybody in favor of 2 years?
Why though? Because aren't we just gonna have to renegotiate all of this in 1 year when we get the tiered water rates?
Mayor, Counselor, not necessarily. Just because you will have a presentation that shows you what tiered water rates could look like does not necessarily mean that council would want to implement those tiered water rates. So there are reasons to do it. Certainly there could be counter reasons to not do it, and you would have to make that decision at that time. So the benefit of the 2 years, it gives us more time for public education, which will definitely be necessary to transition to a tiered rate structure. And that gives us an extra amount of time to do that. But it is a conversation we anticipate having as soon as the study is completed.
I'm fine with 2 years then. It's fine.
Sorry, Paula, when do we expect the study to be complete?
Mayor, we could probably give you those recommendations now. We need to set rates on a tiered system now without your direction, without some public outreach. And since I've been in this position, that was not enough time to set rates for adoption in January 2026. So, but we can present data pretty quickly. But you probably want your new city manager to be seated. So Lima probably doesn't want any part of it. So, it can certainly be docketed for a future work session.
Okay. So it sounds like then 2 is not too big, a terrible thing to do.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Let's revote.
Are we voting on 1 year or 2 years?
We already voted on 1. We're voting on 2 now.
We'll see if
It
2,
passed, but if you want to see if 2 passes too, we can.
does anybody have any interest?
The 2 year would be 8 and 6.5.
8 and 8.
8 and 8.
Okay, thank you.
I'm fine with 2 years.
I think 2 years might as well.
See what you did there, Pat? You utilized your
Your influence.
I didn't influence anything.
Pat's fault.
All right, we still have another one, don't we? Oh, no. That's,
Yeah, we do.
oh, sewer. Oh, my gosh. I thought we were all done with water.
Oh, we did sewer.
All right, on to sewer. So the recommendation, it sounds like 34 and 18. the proposal. Discussion about that before we.
And Krista, you said the 425,000 that we currently
Oh, yeah,
use from 1 cent. That's the difference between a 34% increase and a 33% increase.
Mayor, Counselor, that's accurate.
Yeah.
This is just kind of more like, general feeling is about the, like what Pat, Councilor Sweeney's concerns about, you know, and the other concerns about voter response to the 1 cent. But I think a lot of it will depend on the education we do around what way that 1 cent is shaking out. And, that's what the voter looks for is kind of what's in it for me, you know, in terms of, you know, whether it's, if it's streets, I think, you know, our survey indicated streets were a high priority, police, fire, you know. And I think if utility rates get some benefit, that's great. But if they don't, I think streets, fire, all that bigger infrastructure stuff is. But I think of these utility things as infrastructure. So, yeah, that's it.
Well, it seems like this is pretty straightforward, 34% to 18%. It doesn't seem like there's much of a difference. But we can get down that road as when we talk about 1 cent down the road. But I'm comfortable with 34 to 8 and 18. That's how everybody else feels. If there's any discussion around it.
Can we? Do I have your permission?
Oh, yeah. You don't need my permission.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, like I said, with your lifespan, life cycle for years. So I want to see this happen, but I do think to whatever extent we can in our messaging, you know, explain to people that this is majority because we had a 300-year life cycle replacement schedule. We are transitioning to a 100-year replacement schedule so as to stop deferring maintenance. And so, you know, it's not like we're doing the same things we've always done, just charging you 34% more. We are trying to right the ship and get to a point where the sewer system is not getting worse every year. We're at least maintaining and I don't even know if we're actually improving over time, but just maintaining whatever our current state is. That's the least we should be doing, in my opinion. Like that's the least that we as a council need to be doing is maintaining, ideally improving. But
any other thoughts?
I have a thought, but I think we should address this particularly first because it's overarching this sewer. So
okay.
Let's finish that.
Any other thoughts about the 34 and 18? Okay. I know that this is, I mean, it's a tough conversation, you guys. And I think the thing that I always say is, you know, that political view of it saying, okay, well, they're raising our rates. Well, you and I, we pay those rates too. So it's going to affect us. But we have to also look at the reality of what we have to take care of in our community, what we have not done. And you're right, Kyle. I don't think pushing this off to another council. I'm going to be off in a year, you know, and the rest of us 10 years from now.
It's going to be a 40% increase
exactly
for the next council.
Yep. So I'm okay with 34 or 18. Okay. Amber, you said you wanted something else.
Yeah, I think it's more of just like I don't know. As I was going over the memo this weekend and just kind of thinking about this, it seems like over the 5 years that I've been on council, we've worked to avoid these double-digit jumps and increases. I think through analysis and diligence and that sort of thing, there's been a few times when I felt like, okay, there's an anomaly, so we've got to account for that anomaly that we experienced.
Sorry, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Field
Didn't mean to
COVID.
leave you up there.
You made our decision very easy. Staff's recommendations. Took a while to get there.
Sorry.
And so I think this felt like some of the most comprehensive information we've been presented with, at least in the last 5 years, which is very helpful. And I appreciate the work that went into doing that. And I guess my question is, what is it about our process this year that was able to provide us with that level of detail that at least we haven't had in the past, and get us to the point where we are efforts at what I feel like over the last 5 years to avoid major jumps like this. I mean, I think we've known about the deferred maintenance, at least to some extent, over time. So I'm just wondering, it feels like we've known about it for 5 years. We've got to take a big jump now. We've taken a few of those over the course of the 5 years, but I'm just wondering, like, process-wise or philosophy-wise, like, have there been shifts within the way city staff is working on this or approaching it? I know there's been some structural changes within the organization that has maybe allowed staff time to be dedicated to a more thorough analysis. Can you just talk about, like, the organizationally, how did we get to this relative to my last 5 years? Like, we didn't see this moment coming necessarily, though I feel like in some ways we did. Does that make sense?
Mayor, Counselor, I think there's a number of different things that you referenced. So there have been some staff changes at higher levels that I think have encouraged a different way of thinking, particularly about the capital need and the reality behind what it's really going to take to create a capital agenda that matches best practices, regulatory requirements, all of the things, right? Where I think our aversion to high rate increases has always tempered that in the past to the detriment of the system overall and the future sustainability of the system when it comes to capital. And so, whereas now the people closer to the operation of the utilities are helping to drive that conversation and really clearly demonstrate and represent the need, I think makes a big difference. And I would also say that all of you and your support and your clear understanding of the need when it comes to capital investment also helps. If we had a different council that consistently was reluctant to understand or invest in capital in the way that we need to be sustainable, we may not have chosen to be bold and have this conversation. So that is credit to you all for being open and understanding the true need of the community in terms of our critical infrastructure.
Yeah, go ahead.
That, I think you, in my mind, as an outsider in a newbie process, Carter is an extremely conservative leader. And I think not to the detriment of the city whatsoever, but I think he looks at things differently. And not saying any fault of Selena at all, but I just think, I don't think he held back anything. I'm not saying that, but I just think his style was protection of counsel in part of his analysis and thought process, which I always appreciated that about him. So I think that could be part of it too. Maybe that's just. So.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think that was sort of my instinct about it as well. Just over the last several years, we've had an opportunity to dig into some of these things a little bit more. But even when I first got on council, there was, we were taking tours and pointing out all of the instances of deferred maintenance throughout all of our facilities and all of our infrastructure. And I think even then, I felt strongly that the bill for deferred maintenance always comes due. And it usually is expensive when that comes due. And I think that is where we're at right now. And I think this, you can see actually through those charts, not only have we been subsidizing rates with 1 cent, we also have not been increasing rates commensurate with other communities that presumably, Cheyenne didn't start 30% higher than our rates or 40% higher than our rates where they're sitting. And so I think that has, and that looks like it probably goes back decades of incremental increases that haven't necessarily been happening here in the same way. And so I think that's the bill that's coming due for us when we look at a 300-year replacement schedule. It looked to me like in next year for water, that was only 25%. So that's a 400-year replacement schedule, right? And so I think that's what we see here and why. And I think the good news, while it is an impact, the average is $12. That gets spread over a lot of people, which is an advantage that we have. And so I think we have to take the opportunity to start moving that direction, or else it will only grow worse from here. That's what I see.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Great discussion. Thank you, staff. Being here late, working, all the work that you guys put into that.
Yep, thanks.
Appreciate it. It was a lot of work. Thank you.
Beamer doesn't care.
He was ready just to, he was like,
I didn't care.
That's why he was
Beamer was
kinda
like,
looking.
you've got three recommendations. Let's go, people. That's what he said. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan. All right. No, I'm been kind of waiting. I have to go to the bathroom here in a second too, but we'll push through. Counts around the table, not a lot. You get one announcement.
That's all I got.
Yeah, Pat's gone.
Missed it.
Sorry, Pat, you missed it.
Let's make it longer.
All right, let's do the agenda review. Juliana, do you have anything you want to go over from the grid? Anything for next meeting?
Mayor, councilors, thank you. So next Tuesday is a regular business meeting. We will start with a pre-meeting discussion on Moorhead Park and winter safely, timely this time of year, of course. And then just a note that the week of Christmas, we will not meet, and you all chose to use the 5th Tuesday in December, December 30th, to make up that second work session. So that is what it looks like through the end of the calendar year. And so next week will be my last meeting as interim, and the December 30th meeting will be Janine's first meeting. With the holiday break there in between.
So we have, there would be a resolution that we would have on this, on the rate, to vote formally on the rate increase.
So yes, so that those resolutions will come forward next week.
All right.
Huge packet, huh? I'll warn Pat.
Can't make sure Pat
A lot of items.
gets
I'm
enough
sure.
time on it. All righty, let's go ahead and count around the table. Jenna, do you want to start?
Sure. You hear me all right?
Very quiet.
Just yell.
A little quiet.
It's kind of quiet.
Talk loud.
Kind of quiet. How about there?
Pretty quiet. That's all right.
Closer. Closer to my microphone.
There you go.
For this. Trying to recap what I did last week, but my brain is in a fog. So I don't think I have anything. The parade was great. Thank you everyone who came out, and it was fabulous. I hope you all were there. Had to have been like 2,000 people down there. It was nutty. So, and it was awesome, and the weather held out, and so just a lot of joy for that parade. So I think that was it. That's what I did all weekend.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah.
Amber.
I don't have anything of
Not much. Counselor Haskins and I met with Judge Hand last night. We touched base and what new there. I think there wasn't a lot there. We talked about that. Alive at 25. process a little bit and version.
Michael.
Yeah, no complaints.
You have anything, Brandon?
I was listening.
Nothing.
So I've been watching appropriations off and on, been very interesting. The would like to ask before we adjourn, thought process and date yet on the legislative dinner. If we've made any progress.
We don't have a date quite yet. Yeah.
And it needs to be after January 16th, because appropriations, if Bill Alaman would participate, it'll be
before the 16th.
Yeah, he'll be tied up both the week of January 5th and January 12th.
Also, it has to be after.
After. Yeah. So last Thursday, I went to the Advanced Casper and Visit Casper open house. That was nice. Checked with a couple merchants on Chocolate Walk downtown. That really was very successful this year. The weather definitely helped. And it looked like the Christmas parade was a huge success. Lots and lots of cars parked at every place. And then yesterday, Visit Casper had a budget amendment meeting, and specifically for that. And Amico Reuse had a special meeting and then holiday party last night. This morning, I attended Downtown Casper Business Association meeting, and that was well attended. And Melissa from DDA was there and talked to him a bit. 10 o'clock, I attended the senior district meeting, and they're now actively collecting on the mill levy, and so their finances are looking better finally, in being able to give more to the grant application. So, and then attended Meals on Wheels board meeting at noon, and they had put an application in for funding, and so we talked about that a little bit. But and then I'm here. So awesome. And then and I won't be. I'll be in Pennsylvania on the 16th, and then when we're setting an agenda for the 30th, I wasn't intending on attending, but if there's certain things, but I would ask. I'd like to be here for if we're going to discuss with the second sheet of ice and those folks. If that can be pushed back until I'm here in person, I would much prefer that. I don't think, my opinion is with the death of Glenda Thomas's mom, and that funeral is going to be on the 5th. January. And she's been a key component of the fundraising for the second sheet of ice and working with Peter Wold and that entire group. I just think it's pretty tacky if we do that at this point in time. So that's my thought.
We'll look at that farm date.
Counselor, I don't disagree. She has a primary component and she does have a lot of family things happening right now. And so, but I do know that group wanted to be respectful of the timeline that council granted them by which to, conduct their fundraising efforts. And so, but if you are all comfortable pushing to a date in January, I'm sure she would appreciate it.
January 13th probably then.
I think it would be the 13th is the soonest. Is council okay with that? If we push it a little bit, okay. That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Kyle.
Thanks, Mayor. At a homelessness meeting last Wednesday, the current continuum of care and stakeholders, there's a lot of changes going on at HUD. There was a new, I don't understand that world as much as most of the people that I sit around the table with, but I know there's a change in priority at HUD from permanent housing to more so like street outreach treatment and other initiatives. And so the folks in the permanent housing realm, I think there's a lot of anxiety about whether that funding that has existed will continue to exist in the coming year. Central Wyoming Counseling Center is contracting with a court data system that other providers will be able to subscribe to, gives us more insight related to time, place, and circumstances and people needing and receiving treatment. I believe that's what the chief was referring to earlier in the Peace in Our City presentation. Should help break down silos and promote collaboration between agencies. In January, CWCC will be offering a 9-bed supervised recovery program in addition to acquiring a counseling center in Fremont County. That'll help them to coordinate services between our two counties as well as transportation, which has been an issue these past couple of years as we've seen more and more people from the Fremont County area receiving services in Casper. So I'm thankful for that, and hopefully it'll lead to some really good coordination to get folks back to their home counties after they've come here for service. The Arbor House, which is the old Mimi's house for unaccompanied student youth, will be opening with 18 beds. So it's great to see some places coming online to help serve these demographics. And then Brad with the Central Wyoming Rescue Mission stated that Riverton is about to open a shelter called Mercy House. And that's great because, again, the Fremont County area, a lot of folks come in here for homeless services because they don't exist there. So I'm hoping that with the opening of the Mercy House, that'll take a little bit of the burden off of Casper to provide those services for folks outside our county. And other than that, I did go to the Chocolate Walk and the parade, all very nice. I stopped into Sierra West. Judy Anderson and her daughter opened that store 30 years ago. It was the old Harry S. Smith's clothing store. And this is their last year. She's selling the building. So I would encourage folks, there's a ton of history in that building. That shop's been around 30 years. Always one of my favorite places to go to during Christmas. So PSA, this is your last year. Potentially, it's possible somebody buys the building and just keeps running the business, but might be your last year to step in there. So I might encourage you to go see Judy before they close their doors. That's all I got.
Let's go. Vice Mayor.
Trona County Health Department has set up a one-stop shop for mental well-being resources. If anybody would like one of those flyers, QR code takes you to all the different resources that are available. I requested a few of them so I can give them out to some of the churches and stuff, and that's good. So that because churches always get people calling them needing help, and that's a great resource for that. The Peace in Our Cities, just so you know, we had several meetings on what we wanted to present to you guys, and there was probably 8 more hours worth of stuff that we would like to present to you. So as you go through your packet and read those things, and as we get more on the blueprint, we'll get that information out to everybody. But as you're going through that, you get questions, click on those links. There's a ton of information. More than happy to have you reach out to me, and we can do a one-on-one sometime and go over any questions that you've got on any of the Peace in Our City stuff. I think that with the visit to Edmonton, we saw a lot of things that are very pertinent to our community because we're such sister cities. And I think that the 24/7 crisis intervention is going to be huge. I think that's something that we definitely want to see grow. Watching it in place there in Edmonton was just fantastic. And seeing how Reach up there coordinates everybody to work together. I think that we're going to see some great progress in the next year or two as we move forward with a lot of the different things that we've already got going on and the different things we're implementing. It was just very exciting to see that and have Peace in Our Cities as a consultant for us to help us to be able to do those things. Got any questions? Reach out. I love talking about it.
Thank you. Nothing of consequence. I just had a rec board meeting last Friday. Just reviewed a lot of applications. So it was good. That's about all I got. All righty. We got an executive session.
I'll be zooming in hopefully
Next week.
Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw that on that. Thank you. I now call the December 9th, 2025 special council meeting to order. All members are present. Chair to entertain a motion to, nope, nobody's getting excused.
I'm not gonna do the exec session
Okay.
meeting, so I'm not gonna be
Okay.
present, just
Yeah, we don't have-
FYI. I'm gonna get off
have to
now.
We'll excuse you then. See ya.
We don't.
Thank you. All right,
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Chair to entertain a motion to by minute action and excuse the absence of Councillor Jensen.
So, second.
Moved by Pollock, seconded by the Vice Mayor. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding personnel. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session at the conclusion of the executive session to reconvene the special meeting solely for the purposes of adjournment of this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Sweeney, seconded by the Vice Mayor. There are a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into an executive session has been moved and seconded. This motion requires a 2/3 majority of the council present. Any abstentions or nay votes? All voting aye, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Greater than 2/3 majority of the council present voted in favor of the motion. We are hereby adjourned into an executive session.